Chapter 925. Under the gray sky, a similarly gray mountain range stood on the ground. The mountains were still majestic, but there was a hint of sadness in them. Following their shape, they meandered towards the end of the line of sight. Under the gray sky, ashes fell from the dead silence. The world was lonely and desolate. The exposure of the innermost space of the Jiasu secret realm caused this place to become exceptionally cold and cheerless. Large amounts of spatial energy gathered in various places, like huge ice crystals that were about to fall. At a certain moment, the spatial energy gathered to the extreme. Then, the space suddenly collapsed. Silver-blue balls of light flashed on the ground and disappeared. Then, groups of people gradually appeared. Countless people looked around in a daze. Originally, they were still looking at the huge, floating island in the sky, crashing down like a meteor. With a sway, they felt as if they had fainted, and when they reappeared, they were in this gloomy world. Countless people had a blank look on their faces, not knowing what had happened. However, this strange change had piqued the curiosity of many people. One after another, they stood up and looked at the dilapidated land. A trace of sadness welled up in their hearts, as if they had been affected by the environment here. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the distance, countless silver-blue balls of light appeared and disappeared quickly. Those people who had disappeared suddenly appeared out of thin air, causing those who came out of the secret realm to be even more confused. At the same time, they were also shocked. The people who gathered together murmured something. At a glance, it looked like a collective truce. Many teams gathered here to rest and discuss the unbelievable thing that had just happened. In this seemingly harmonious situation, many people suddenly had a flash of inspiration, as if they had been enlightened. They stood up abruptly, and the confusion in their eyes was swept away. All of them moved and headed towards different places. Moreover, they all rose into the sky together. There were quite a number of people who had sensed something. They are all here. Many of them are smart people. Although they don't know what has happened, a little bit of connection power can still make them move. On the gray mountain, Yin Nuashing looked at those people who had soared into the sky. His gaze was aimlessly fixed on a group of people. He watched as they rushed towards other areas. After they disappeared from his sight, he calmly retracted his gaze. His palm gently stroked Xiao Xian, who was lying on his arm and leisurely wagging her tail. "Father, will Lin Sheng and Yao Hua be successful?" Bing Er turned her head to look at Yin Nuashing. That day, she had inexplicably eaten something and recovered. Her entire person, her entire demon body felt different. The spiritual light in her eyes bloomed like a sage who had gained great enlightenment and wisdom. She also felt like a mystical heavenly treasure that had lived for hundreds of millions of years. Her entire body was overflowing with spiritual aura. As for what had changed, Bing Er herself could not tell. She just felt comfortable all over, as if something that was detrimental to her body's cultivation had been cleansed. Even her soul had become several times brighter. No, we might be able to make it in time for the nearest areas. As for the areas that are slightly further away, unless Yao Hua personally goes to the furthest area to catch the holy object, he probably won't be able to make it in time. Yin Nuashing looked up at the people below. His hand that was stroking Xiao Xian's soft fur paused. "We should be able to take away about 10 of them at once. If we are able to resolve the conflict quickly, 12 shouldn't be a problem. After all, the other people's reaction speed is not slow either. They might not be able to make it in time for the furthest 6 areas, but they should be able to fight for it. As for whether we can succeed or not, that is not something we can control. Aren't we going to help?" Yuan Shi looked into the distance. "If we're going to fight, it would be better if we have more people. Most of the high-level combatants have stayed here." Speaking of this, Xian and the others were stunned. They counted silently, and their expressions were a little strange. There were 10 of them. 7 of them were at the beginner god level, and 2 were at the demigod level. One of them didn't seem to have much combat power, but he was more ferocious than anyone else. Most of their combat power was here. Believe in them. Yao Hua and the rest have all advanced to the beginner god level, and Lin Sheng and the rest are not simple people. If I have to say, Yin Nuashing pondered for a while, rubbed his fingers, and flicked the ears of the little lazy bum who was sleeping all day long in his arms, and said, yes, it should be like this. The protagonists of heaven and earth in this period, if we pick them out and evaluate them comprehensively, they are also very strong. When you say this, it doesn't sound convincing at all. Everyone looked at him with slight resentment and sighed faintly. I won't participate in the competition between the younger generation of this era. That's what you should do. Yin Nuashing glanced at them indifferently and said, then what are you going to do? Be your little deity? Yuanqi mumbled. Yin Nuashing pondered. His gaze was slightly deep. What was he? According to his plan, he wouldn't participate in the competition between the heavens and the earth in this era. There was no need for him to participate. He used to be a god and had the body of a taboo god in the ancient times. These two titles were enough to represent a lot of things. He didn't have the intention to compete with the little brats for anything. Those people and those things would happen naturally. He didn't intend to get involved. He still had his own things to do. Yes, I should be considered. After thinking like this for a while, Yin Nuashing frowned slightly and muttered for a while. Everyone looked at him curiously. They wanted to know how he saw himself, and how he saw himself after knowing all these things. As if he had thought of a very appropriate answer, Yin Nuashing smiled faintly and said, observer. That's right. Independent observation. Drifting away from the world, watching the world. But, my great observer, you bear the mission of protecting the realm of the gods. You're also the divine body of the spiritual reception of this era. Currently, the monster realm and demon realm are about to appear. Moreover, they will definitely not leave you alone. How can you stand alone? If you want to transcend the world, you have to wait for the right time. Yuanqi sighed. Yin Nuashing's expression stiffened. Seeing his expression, everyone sighed helplessly. It seemed like this guy really didn't have any self-awareness. He always wanted to transcend the mortal world, but there were still many people in the mortal world who were thinking about him. This guy probably couldn't even become a great deity. He would probably fall from the sky because of people's nagging. This is a problem. Let me think. It doesn't seem to be a solution. Sigh, this bunch of brats always make me worry. Can't they just let me rest for a while? Yin Nuashing tugged at his long hair and sighed helplessly. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's all because your reputation is too frightening. You don't even know how important you are to this world. When you're evil, you're also in a state of destroying the world. If you're evil, you'll be a disaster. If you're not evil, you'll still be a mysterious relic. The number of major forces in the outside world who are thinking about him can't be counted with one hand. Even if you have 2 legs, it probably won't be enough. With this kind of worldwide attention status, you still want to transcend the mortal world? You're the one who fell into depravity in the mortal world. In my memory, I've lived in the realm of the gods for several lifetimes. Even in the lower realm, there are some worlds similar to the realm of the gods. Competition, and heroes vie for supremacy. I don't know how many lifetimes it has been, but I just can't rest. Yin Nuashing sighed. The tree wants to be quiet, but the wind won't stop. Chu Yingxian shook her head and glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. With your reputation, how can it be quiet? This world will undergo a huge change because of you. You're the core of this matter, and you still want to be quiet? Yin Nuashing looked at her with hidden bitterness. Just as he was about to say something, his eyes suddenly trembled. He raised his head and looked into the distance. In a place that couldn't be seen by the naked eye, there was suddenly a bright light pillar that soared into the sky. The extremely bright light pillar dyed the dark gray sky and made everyone shocked. Countless people also raised their heads to look at the place where the light pillar rose. That place crossed several regions. Even a beginner god would find it difficult to see from this place. However, it was reflected in their eyes so clearly. Buzz! Suddenly, 2 objects flew out from Yin Nuashing's body and stood on both sides of him. They were the dark elemental holy artifact and the void holy artifact. After the 2 holy artifacts appeared, they also suddenly burst into extremely bright light. Then, 2 light pillars soared into the sky. That huge movement attracted the attention of countless people. In an instant, Yin Nuoxing and the others also knew what was going on with those light pillars in the distance. Have all the holy artifacts been taken by someone else? Yuan Shi and the others narrowed their eyes and looked at the place where the light pillars soared into the sky. He counted carefully. 13. There are still 3 left. Just as he finished speaking, a fiery red light pillar surged at the end of the horizon and dyed the distant sky orange. This has been activated by someone. The 16 holy artifacts should have been activated. The remaining 2 holy artifacts are probably still fiercely fighting for them. However, as long as it stabilizes, perhaps immediately, before Yin Nuoxing could finish speaking, another 2 light pillars burst into the sky. A total of 16 extremely bright light pillars once again changed the dark gray sky. At this moment, everyone seemed to have realized what was going on and knew what was going on with these light pillars. However, knowing was one thing. Many people here glanced at the place where the 2 light pillars came from and only sighed. In the end, they still didn't know what was going on. However, the holy artifacts had fallen into Yin Nuoxing's hands, so they didn't seem to have any resentment. What happened that day had cast a shadow in everyone's hearts. Now, looking at the people beside him, each of them had a strong aura. They were all masters that they couldn't afford to offend. Little Star, what do you think this second stage is? Yuan Shi crossed his arms and looked at the people below. He saw that some people's eyes were flickering and some dangerous auras were leaking from their bodies, intimidating those people. Only then did he say, the people participating in this journey to the secret realm aren't just the god-tier academies of the realm of the gods. There are also many forces of the realm of the gods. Is there any special meaning to this second stage? Perhaps there is. Yin Nuoxing looked at the other 14 light pillars and carefully sized them up for a while. Then he looked at the 2 holy artifacts beside him and said, perhaps the 16 holy artifacts can open the door to different degrees. Perhaps some holy artifacts can only bring 10 people in, while some holy artifacts with stronger energy can bring 100 people in. If the second stage is meaningful, it might be to let the 16 teams divide the holy artifacts among themselves. Yin Nuoxing analyzed from the brightness of those light pillars, but he didn't know whether he was right or not. He could only guess. Otherwise, what was the meaning of the second stage? Although I don't really understand. Nightmare twisted his neck and made a cracking sound. He then clenched his fists and laughed mischievously. But it seems like they want to fight. I understand that part. Everyone rolled their eyes helplessly. This battle idiot, battle maniac. The 2 holy artifacts beside him suddenly emitted rays of light that fell from the sky. A dense ball of light fell and enveloped Yin Nuoxing and the others. Then, the gray sky gradually became brighter. It was as if a curtain of light had fallen from the sky and enveloped the group. Dense spatial fluctuations gradually spread out. Then, countless rays of light soared into the sky and disappeared in this gray world. As everyone left, the gray world rumbled and shook. The dark elemental energy that had accumulated in places that no one could see was also burned at this moment and dissipated between heaven and earth. This space became more and more distorted, as if it was going to completely self-destruct. Taiyuan region. On the day when the journey to the secret realm opened, a huge square was located in the center of Taiyuan region, near Xingming City. This huge square could accommodate 1 million people. At this moment, in this spacious square, there was a palm-sized black door floating in the air, quietly rotating. Since the day when countless people had left, this place had become completely quiet. Not many people stopped to wait here. No one knew how long this journey to the secret realm would last. Clang! At a certain moment, a loud tremor suddenly erupted from the small black door. It sounded like the loud sound of metal clashing against metal, reverberating in the square. The loud sound even spread throughout the entire Star Underworld City. The originally noisy and lively Star Underworld City seemed to have quieted down in an instant. Countless people looked at each other blankly, not knowing what had happened. Only a few people still remembered what had happened more than a year ago. This event could be considered a grand occasion among the younger generation in the myriad gods world, so naturally, many people would remember it. At this moment, when they heard the sound of metal clashing, they were all stunned. Was it time? Suddenly, a figure appeared in the empty square. This figure looked a little ordinary and didn't appear to be tall. As soon as he appeared, he floated beside the small black door. When he saw the door constantly vibrating, an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. He stretched out his fair hand and pressed it on the small door. Immediately, it quieted down. How rare! The Jesu's secret realm has been opened many times, but it has never been opened. The dark elemental energy there has accumulated to a dangerous threshold. If we don't clean it up soon, something bad will happen. The young figure sighed. A look of vicissitudes flashed across his eyes. Obviously, he was an old monster of unknown age, even though he looked so young. Back then, the Jesu's secret realm could produce 16 keys. That's why we didn't destroy it. TSK, in the end, it hasn't been opened for so many years. Those 16 keys have never been taken out. But this time, it seems like we can get what we want. Is it worth it? The other secret realms basically have 5 or 6 keys, and we don't need to waste our energy to maintain the stability of the secret realm. This Jesu's secret realm, on the other hand, has always been maintained with a lot of effort. At this point, the person shook his head helplessly. I just don't know which force was lucky enough to obtain these keys. Haha, the keys to the Jesu's secret realm are a little special. At the same time, the news that the journey to the secret realm was coming to an end gradually spread to the other forces that participated in this grand event. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the Taiyuan territory. However, they knew that this was only the news that was about to end. It didn't mean that it was going to end now. As long as one had some understanding of the second phase, they knew. It was just that no one knew where this phase would take place, whether it would take place in the secret realm or somewhere else. No one knew. This was not a public matter. However, it seemed to be a little different this time. The news of the journey to the secret realm was passed to the hands of many major forces, such as the 9 divine temples, the 12 star palaces, and several ancient families. These transcendent forces all received the news that the journey was coming to an end. Their expressions all changed. As for the Qi family, they had already received news of Qi Haoyu's death a year ago. Now that the journey to the secret realm was exposed, the faces of the Qi family's higher-ups darkened. Pay attention to the movements of the 9 divine temples. Although we can't be completely sure about Haoyu's death, to be able to kill him before he could even crush the soul jade, it's most likely someone of the younger generation with the spiritual godly physique. We didn't receive news of that kid entering the secret realm on the day it opened, but that doesn't mean that he won't appear inside. King Qi's face was gloomy, as if a storm was about to come. That little bastard seems to have some connections with the 9 divine temples. The patriarch has been in seclusion for a long time. We can't let him come out and see the Qi family in such a sorry state. Send Qi Feng and the other seedlings to the small divine prefecture first. As for the 9 divine temples and the spiritual godly physique, make appropriate arrangements. Seeing that King Qi's expression was extremely gloomy but did not explode, Qi Yu and the others knew that he was just a volcano that was enduring silently. With a force like the 9 divine temples in front of him, he had no choice but to endure silently. However, there was a limit to this. Even a rabbit would bite when it was forced into a corner, and the Qi family was not a rabbit to begin with on the 9 divine temples side. When they received news that the secret realm was about to end, the Golden Queen and the others were a little excited. It had been a year. Unknowingly, the divine temples had become a lot quieter without those little fellows around. Although they did not know what had happened in the secret realm during this year, and what kind of adventures the little fellows had encountered, the powerful aura that came from the soul tablets made them know that these little fellows seemed to have improved a lot. They had all managed to squeeze into that realm. It should be known that those who could squeeze into the elementary deity level were considered true experts in the realm of the gods. Moreover, the elementary deity level was definitely not as easy to enter as one would think. It seemed that there was something special in the secret realm that sped up their progress. Well, don't be too excited. Prepare what you need to prepare first. When they come back, we have to check on them first. They broke through the elementary deity level too quickly. I'm worried that they have overdrawn part of their talent. If so, we have to find a way to make up for it, so that they don't have enough stamina. Seeing that everyone was excited about the little fellow's return, Palace Master Jean could not help but say. This sentence calmed Golden Queen and the others down a little. They all nodded. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to break through from the demigod 9th transformation to the elementary deity level without decades of accumulation. However, this group of children had broken through the demigod 9 transformation and entered the elementary deity level in a year. This made them a little worried. They were afraid that Yao Hua and the others would have some side effects because of this. Boom! Just as they finished speaking, there was a loud explosion from the Golden Divine Temple. A secret room was flipped into the sky, causing the palace masters, Golden Queen, and the others to be stunned. That direction seemed to be the place where Ning Qianxue was cultivating in seclusion. Before everyone could go over to take a look, they saw a beautiful figure in blue and white rush out in a hurry. She said, "I found where Little Star and the others are holding the second stage." Everyone was stunned. This fellow had actually found that place? In the past, not many people had paid attention to it. After all, the journey to the secret territory would not be made public. However, seeing that she was in a hurry, everyone was a little confused. Where is it? Ning Qianxue hurriedly tidied up. Looking at everyone, her expression was very serious. Her words stunned everyone. In the east of the Taiyuan region, near the heavenly abyss, that is a forbidden area. Chapter 926. Sky Abyss. The Golden Princess and the others were stunned when they heard this. Then, their expressions became serious. That place was a place of no life and was filled with unknown dangers. The level of danger, there was no less than the eye of the storm sea in the east sea of the divine land. Even an emperor god could easily lose his life if he entered that place. Usually, only those who were looking for death or wanted to die would enter that place. Others would not be so bored as to enter that place for a walk. They would rather hide from that place. Why is it that place? Palace leader Jean could not help but frown. That place was not a good place. Out of all the death traps, Sky Abyss was one of the most famous. It was infamous and very mysterious. I remember that place. It was where a god spirit was buried a few years ago, Queen Jean said as she rubbed her chin. Golden Queen's jade-like hand stroked her chin. She whispered, "God Spirit Burial Ground." Many strange things happen. Many people know about this place, and many speculate that there's a complete God Spirit ruin down there. It is just that the area is covered by a strange presence. Not many people can get in. Back then, a big faction was killed by the Sky Abyss. That faction had 30 God King elites. They all died there. Not even dust was left. Palace leader Jin's voice was serious. Speaking of which, the god spirit that died was the one from the Shi family. He was the elder of the Shi family. Since he died, the Shi family's status fell. Even with the god spirit blood pulse, there are not many top-class elites in the family. No, this is not the time to talk about this. Queen Jean was shocked. She suddenly reacted. She rolled her eyes at Palace leader Jean and said, "Prepare the eternal weapons. Bring a dozen of them. Little Star and the others are there. Perhaps they will be in danger." "I will go too," Ning Qianxue said as she waved her fist in the air. "It is just a ghost that has been dead for a few eras. I am a living god spirit. What can it do to me?" Queen Jean and the others broke out in cold sweat. They were afraid she would say that. They were not worried about Sky Abyss. They were just worried that Ning Qianxue would be so worried that she would dig up someone's grave. She would not be able to rest in peace after she died. This was an ancient and desolate land. No one had set foot here for countless years. One era was enough to accumulate the aura of time. This creeping mountain range had been eroded by time for several eras. Naturally, it carried an ancient aura. To ordinary people, This aura was no different whether it was several eras or dozens of eras old. They only needed to know that this place had existed for a long time. Moreover, it was very strange and mysterious. In particular, countless people would remember this place because it was a place that could cause people to die without paying for it. In the center of this mountain range, a vertical crack suddenly appeared. The mountain was also smoothly cut from top to bottom. When one looked over, an abyss that was tens of thousands of feet wide suddenly appeared in one's sight. From the bottom of the abyss, there was a terrifying aura. It was as if it was the deepest darkness, deeper than the ninth hell. That aura directly changed the nature of the area within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. It was no longer suitable for the existence of life. Even staying here would make one feel uncomfortable. The rules here had changed. Tens of thousands of feet high in the sky, there was a huge golden platform. Looking at it from a distance, it was no different from the abyss below. A thin barrier enveloped the golden platform, isolating it from the strange aura of energy coming from the abyss. Rays of light descended from the sky and fell on the golden platform. The rays of light gradually dissipated, revealing the figures inside. 16 teams descended uniformly. More than 100 people were scattered on the golden platform. After they appeared, they were all startled. Soon after, they quietly separated a distance. Those who wore the same clothes or the same emblem gathered together. Oh, it wasn't quite right to say that there were 16 teams, because 10 of them were wearing the dazzling white golden robes. It was the uniform of the Long Guang Academy. These 10 teams could actually be considered as one team. Then there was Yun Nuoxing's team. Because of the two sacred objects, they were divided into two groups. However, they weren't far apart. Moreover, he could also be considered as one of the Long Guang Academy's teams. With this, there were only 5 teams left out of the 16 teams. The other 4 teams were wearing different clothes. Moreover, only one of them was from a divine academy. The other 3 teams seemed to be from some forces in the divine world. However, Yin Nuoxing couldn't recognize them. As for the other 4 groups of people, they were also very powerful. There were fewer of them, and they were basically all initial God stage and semi-God stage experts. It seemed that Yin Nuoxing wasn't the only one who had gained a lot in the secret realm. Many of the others had also advanced to the initial God stage. That strange secret realm had reduced the time needed to advance from the semi-God stage to the initial God stage by countless times. They were suddenly sent to a strange place, causing everyone to be on guard. Their gazes constantly swept around, and it was extremely difficult for them to not notice the huge abyss that had suddenly appeared below them. The strange aura that spread out from the abyss was also sensed by the sensitive crowd. That aura caused everyone's hearts to palpitate, and it was somewhat oppressive. It was as if the moment they left this thin golden barrier, they would instantly shatter. This is heavenly abyss? The huge abyss was reflected in his eyes, causing Yun Nuoxing to be stunned for a moment. In the past, he had an almost fanatical pursuit of these dangerous places, and because of some strange memories, he had also understood this heavenly abyss before. Although it was only a partial understanding, and this information was something that anyone could find as long as they wanted to know, it was not a very secretive thing. Although he had never seen the true appearance of heavenly abyss, that special appearance, which seemed to be unique among all the life-forbidden zones, allowed him to recognize it at a glance. However, he only glanced at it once before sweeping it away. His expression was a little unnatural. It wasn't that he wasn't curious about this place, but because his body seemed to have moved a little. The suppression of the secret realm has disappeared, and it has returned to the second seal of the demon rank. It's different from using the elements of chaos to resist the suppression in the secret realm. This time, it has completely returned to normal. The energy left behind actually has signs of breaking through to the next realm. Without leaving a trace, Yin Nuoxing clenched his fist tightly and took a deep breath. The power of the soul gathered next to the energy carrier, temporarily sealing the small space that was opened up. Now is not the time to break through to the next realm. At least, He had to wait until the trip to the secret realm was officially over before he could break through to the next realm with peace of mind. It seems that I can get rid of this restriction. This time, there shouldn't be any mistakes, right? Yin Nuashing sighed. Suddenly, he felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. When he turned his head, he saw that everyone was looking at him with a strange expression. Some were doubtful, some were serious, and all of them seemed to have noticed that his expression was abnormal. Yuanshi took a step forward, cracked his neck, and cracked his knuckles. Little star, if you confess, you will be lenient. If you resist, you will be punished severely. If you don't comply, only death awaits you. Everyone rolled their eyes in unison. Yin Nuashing shrugged helplessly. He didn't intend to hide anything in the first place. After adjusting his words, he said faintly, "It's nothing. After coming out of the secret realm, I found that I seemed to be able to break through to the peak of the demigod rank." Everyone was stunned. Oh. After being stunned for a moment, everyone instantly understood something. As early as a year ago, when Quarter Moon appeared in the Mausoleum world, she said that she had left behind an energy that was enough for him to break through to the demigod rank directly. Now that he came out of the secret realm, it seemed to have been unsealed by itself. Well, I've been thinking about it day and night. Finally, I can get rid of this damned second seal of the demonic rank. Yin Nuashing sighed sadly. He didn't know how long it had been since he had the slightest movement in his strength. The reason for that was that he was worried that the darkness in his soul would cause trouble. This matter had been bothering him for a long time. From the time when everyone was still at the immortal rank to now, when everyone was already at the demigod rank, it had always troubled him, so he didn't dare to cultivate. However, now is not a very good time. It's temporarily sealed. When I'm done with the matters here, I should break through to the demigod rank. Oh, it should be directly breaking through to the demigod rank, Yin Nuashing said. Isn't the spiritual, godly body immune to seals? Chu Yingzhan looked at him strangely. The spiritual, godly body can gradually engulf the seals on its body, so the effects of the seals aren't that great. It's still possible for a temporary seal. I'll just seal myself. Well, I won't be able to hold on for long, so it's better to hurry up and settle the matters here. Yin Nuashing pursed his lips. The space above the golden platform suddenly distorted, and soon it formed a black space door. A powerful aura exploded from it, causing everyone to look over. The black space door suddenly flickered, and then a very young figure with long white hair slowly walked out of the space door. He was holding a palm-sized door in his hand. Tianyuan. The venue this time is a little interesting. After that person came out of the space door, he was stunned for a moment when he saw the place. However, he didn't look as shocked or frightened as others when they heard about the forbidden zone for life. However, when the group of people below heard this name, especially when they knew that they were inside, their faces turned pale. Their cheeks and eyes kept twitching, and they couldn't help but curse in their hearts. They never thought that they would come to such a frightening place in the second stage. This was a place that even some high-level gods didn't dare to come to. The calm person looked at the group of people below, and Yin Nuashing also raised her head to look at the small black door in his hand. He was one of the few people in this group who was very calm. After all, no matter how frightening Tianyuan's name was, it wasn't as frightening as his own background. He just looked at the familiar small black door with a little curiosity and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Time. The incident of sending the shadow door out that day was still vivid in his mind. In the blink of an eye, he saw the shadow door again, and dozens of eras had passed. This was probably something that even he himself didn't expect. Well, these were all Quarter Moon's memories. Little guys, first of all, congratulations on obtaining the qualification to participate in the second stage of the journey to the secret land. As long as you don't go out, you won't be affected by the aura outside. So this stage is very straightforward. Before explaining the rules, a very important point is that the 16 holy objects are the keys to the small divine lands. However, their strength is also divided. The holy object with the strongest energy can take 20 people to the small divine lands, and the weakest one can take 6 people to the small divine lands. This is different from the keys rewarded in the previous trips to the secret land. The holy objects in this secret land have never been obtained before. They are the original holy objects, and they can be used repeatedly. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. In the previous trips to the secret land, the final reward was a holy object, which was the key to the small divine lands. However, those were all one-time use. It would disappear no matter how many people were sent in at the same time. The most difficult part was entering the small divine lands. Moreover, until now, no one had found a way to enter the small divine lands easily. The only result was that an Emperor God expert had to go all out. However, not everyone could ask an Emperor God expert to help. Experts of this level were always found in first-rate forces. Some first-rate forces might have sect masters who had just reached the Emperor God level. As for second-rate forces, they might not even have high-level gods. This showed the importance of the holy object key, a key that could be used repeatedly and could continuously send their disciples to the small divine lands to train, was a priceless treasure to some forces. The perfect rules of heaven and earth in the primordial age would allow everyone to cultivate better. As for Yun Nuoxing, Yao Hua, and the others, they were not very interested. Not to mention that there was a large group of emperor gods in the 9 divine temples. Yun Nuoxing could also open the dark elemental barrier by himself. After all, this barrier was more or less related to him. There are other mysteries about the holy objects in the secret land, so I won't say much about it. The rules are very simple. Finish it in an hour. Let's be straightforward. Snatch and defend. The young figure grinned, revealing his big white teeth. There are no special rules. As long as you don't kill, it's fine. Even if one side obtains 4 or 5 holy objects, it's fine, as long as you can defend it. Then, if there are many people here in the same group, wouldn't that be a great advantage? Yao Hua suddenly raised his hand and said, their group had all entered the secret land. If one side has too many people, they must ensure that the other side has at least 1 holy object as a guarantee. As for how strong or weak the holy object is, it depends on their own luck. How could that young figure not know what he was thinking? He couldn't help but smile. He could also see that half of the people here seemed to be from the Farlight Academy. Under this kind of absolute suppression in numbers, in order to prevent the other half from being miserable and not being able to obtain anything, of course, there were protective measures. Yin Nuoxing and the others let out a long causing the other 4 groups to suddenly tremble. They felt an inexplicable chill descend from the sky. Brother Yin, what do you think? Lin Sheng raised his eyebrows and said with a half-smile, I don't want to watch. Yin Nuoxing shrugged and looked at Yao Hua. Yao Hua, what do you think? Yao Hua's eyebrows twitched, and he immediately looked at the other 4 groups with malicious intent. I think that this is a little bullying. The faces of the other 4 groups immediately darkened. At this moment, anyone with a discerning eye could see that this large group of people was in the same group. Looking at their shifty-eyed expressions, it was obvious that they were up to no good. The 4 of them together were not even half of the other side's number. The young figure in the air was also stunned. He looked at the group of people with a strange gaze and shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. However, he did not say anything. It was not like this had never happened in the previous trips to the secret realms. However, every time it happened, the second stage, which was supposed to be a fierce battle, would become a child's play. Basically, it would end without any effort. Unless there was a person from the weaker side who had the power to crush everyone else, they would basically have to wait dejectedly for the end of the round to end with a sacred object. Logically speaking, those who appeared here were not weak. The weakest, excluding Yun Nuoxing, was a demigod, and the strongest was an immortal emperor. Based on this point alone, the other 4 groups had no desire to fight. Even if they fought, they would probably be beaten up. There were no one-on-one rules here. So, my friends, what do you think? Nightmare laughed and flashed his big white teeth at the other 4 groups. His face was full of smiles, making people want to beat him up. This was clearly bullying. What else could they think? Aren't you going to fight? If not, I'll announce the end of the round. Then, go back to your own homes. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Hurry up and decide." At this moment, the person floating in the air urged them. The other four groups' faces darkened, and their mouths became dry. How are they going to fight? Tell me, how are they going to fight? Not everyone was like Yin Nuashing, who had the freakish strength to fight against 100 or 10,000 people alone. Us. Suddenly, a person stood out from the other four groups, making Yin Nuashing and the others look askance. There was actually someone who had the courage to resist? Interesting. Nightmare was rubbing his hands together. However, in the next second, that person spread his hands helplessly and sighed. There's no way to fight. We admit defeat. Nightmare staggered and fell to the ground, doing a split. He twitched and could not stand up for a while. Everyone, why do you have such a heroic expression when you surrender? You make it seem like we bullied you. Wasn't this blatant bullying? This was bullying. The four groups criticized silently, but they did not dare to say anything. Oh, have you reached an agreement? You don't want to fight, right? The young figure raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then, I announced that this round of the Secret Realm trip has come to an end. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although there were times in the past when it was very childish, it was probably not as childish as today. However, it cannot be helped. Yin Nuashing's group had too many people, and each of them had a strong aura. The strongest among them was a divine emperor expert. On the other hand, although the other group was not weak, the strongest was only an ultimate god. Moreover, they only got a small advantage in terms of obtaining the holy artifact. They took advantage of the fact that many people did not know each other, had no grudges, and had never seen each other in the secret realm. There was no reason for them to fight. As for their dissatisfaction, it could not be helped. In short, due to various reasons, the second phase of this round of the secret realm trip was probably the fastest to end. Well, this is not the first time something so dramatic has happened. Yin Nuashing said calmly, completely unaware that she was the one who created this situation. Anyway, not many people who are related to you end up in a normal state, muttered Yuan Shi. Chapter 9:27. Under the clear sky, a golden floating platform floated above an incomparably huge abyss. The aura emanating from the abyss caused the blue sky to change slightly. Even within the barrier, everyone could feel the strange aura. When the young figure announced that everything was over, the weak aura of hostility dissipated completely. The group of people relaxed and looked at the heaven abyss below with interest. So it's over. Standing at the edge of the golden platform, Yin Nuashing looked down at the abyss below. He scratched his head and sighed. This matter was over, but there were still other things to do. There were still many things to do that were waiting to be done by the sequence. Yes, it's over. Yaohua also sighed beside her. Unknowingly, more than a year had passed. There was also more than a month of dreamlike experience in between. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't help but sigh. There were people who had been to the Five Elements realm and had seen the world. Hey, it's a pity that we didn't get all 16 sacred relics. Yaohua shrugged his shoulders casually. As soon as he said this, the four groups of people immediately looked over. You guys got 12 sacred relics. What else do you want? We didn't get the water, wood, metal, and wind keys. For safety reasons, we sent 6 or 7 people to each location. In the end, we didn't even have time to go to the last 4 locations before it was over. Yaohua laughed loudly. Everyone's face darkened. In previous trips to the secret realms, there were cases where one force took the majority. However, the other secret realms only had 4 or 5 sacred relic keys at most. You guys got 12 keys in one go. You've broken the record. The young figure quietly landed on the platform. The shadow gate in his hand rotated quietly, revealing a spatial fluctuation. After activating the shadow gate for a while, he waved his sleeve. A black ray of light swept out from the shadow gate and opened a black spatial door more than 2 meters tall in the center of the golden platform. The pitch-black space made everyone's hair stand on end. All right, little guys, it's time to leave. This platform will dissipate soon. I think you guys won't be interested in the sinkhole below. The person laughed. Why would the second stage be held in such a strange place? Yuan-Shi couldn't help but ask. They had inexplicably appeared in the sky above a life forbidden zone, and according to the original plan, they were supposed to cause a big ruckus, causing trouble in the forbidden zone. The person who did this last time was now buried in an unknown height of grass. Hee. I can't explain it clearly either. It was all the shadow sect's choice. That person waved the small black door in his hand and said, "There's no need to worry about safety. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. Don't be fooled by the fact that the barrier of this platform is only a thin layer. In reality, it can withstand a full-powered attack from a heavenly god without collapsing." Back then, the creator of the Shadow Sect was an Empyrean god. Hearing this, Ming and the others slowly turned their gazes to Yun Nuashing. They couldn't help but think, this god is standing right in front of you. Yun Nuashing couldn't help but mutter when everyone glanced at her. Since it's a first-generation holy relic, there are some rules that need to be mentioned. The young figure coughed dryly and waved his hand, saying, other than being able to open the door to the little divine land, the first-generation holy relic also has some other uses. As for the specific uses, you can find them yourself. This holy relic, whether you keep it for yourself or give it to someone else in your family, there's no problem. However, once we find out that someone is using it to make a deal, we have no choice but to send someone to take back the holy relic in your hands. From the God Emperor to the Netherworld King, all forces that can be used can be used. This is also the agreement from back then. The 9 divine temples also have the right to supervise, so I don't have to say the rest, you should all understand. The group of people nodded vigorously like chickens pecking at rice and swore that they wouldn't use it as a bargaining chip to do anything shameful. After hearing this, the young man nodded with a smile. He waved his hand and pointed to the black space door, saying, "This door can send you to a safe place. Wherever you want to go, just think about it, and you'll be able to get there. This is the only large space transmission. Other than the little divine land, there's no problem even if you want to go to the Kuan Yuan region. If there's nothing else, you should leave early. This place will be maintained for another half an hour. If you don't leave in half an hour, you'll be forcefully sent back to the square next to Xingming City." After saying this, the young man's figure flashed and disappeared, leaving a group of people staring at each other. The 4 groups of people left immediately. There was nothing to say if they stayed here. What's next? Yuan-Shi looked up at the sky. After a while, he lowered his head and looked at everyone present. "We'll probably go straight back to the Long Guang Academy." Lin Sheng smiled at him. Then, he turned his gaze and looked at Yin Nuashing, who was looking up at the sky in deep thought and wearing a faint smile that would never disappear. Lin Sheng asked, "What about Brother Yin? Aren't you all going back to the academy to take a look?" Yin Nuashing lowered his head and pondered for a while. Then he narrowed his eyes. After the journey to the secret realm ended, everyone went back to their own homes. The disciples of the large factions returned to their own factions, while the students of the academies returned to their own. As for him, I won't go back. Yin Nuashing reached out and stroked his long hair that floated in front of him. He sighed softly. "I've done what I promised during the journey to the secret realm. This result is enough to report back to the academy. As for graduation, Elder Yin Feng and the others can take care of it. When the time comes, just let me know. The first round of the star trial has also ended." Hearing him say that he wouldn't go back, Lin Sheng, Ding Menyu, Jun Luo, Yi, and the others also sighed in their hearts. They felt a little melancholy, but they didn't say anything meaningless to persuade him. This journey had allowed them to know a lot about Yin Nuashing. They knew that he still had a lot of things to do. It wasn't that urgent, but it wouldn't be too late either. They had no reason to slow him down. There was no reason for them to delay him. You can still spend a long time in the academy peacefully. This leisure will stop after a year. Yin Nuashing sighed faintly, causing everyone to be stunned. A year? What's wrong with a year? Is something big going to happen after a year? Yao Hua asked, confused. Yes, something big. Very, very big. Is the birth of the 2 worlds of monsters and demons considered a big deal? Yin Nuashing nodded. His calm words made everyone's expression freeze. Birth a year. Everyone was shocked. Yao Hua and the others who had attended the gathering in Taiyuan jumped. Didn't they say 10 years back then? There was still 6 or 7 years to go, right? How did it suddenly become a year? At that time, the people from the demon world said within 10 years. They didn't say 10 years later. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes fiercely. When I was at the first Heavenly Gods training ground, I used my astrolabe to make a little deduction. It's about time. After saying that, Yin Nuashing sighed again. And within this year, I need to repair and activate the guardian formation of the realm of gods. I need to go to the northern ice realm to find my previous body. I need to go to the southern ice realm to retrieve a certain item. I also need to go to the southern ice realm to find the ruined temple and retrieve the memories of the previous lives of this era. If possible, I need to retrieve the karmic fire of the Red Lotus before the demon world descends. I also need to make a trip to the eastern sea's burning mountain. There's also the dark golden forest. Later on, I still need to talk about unsealing my energy and breaking through to elementary god or something. Even if I can't break through to elementary god in one go, I'll still be able to reach the peak of demigod. That's another painful thing to do. When he reached the end of his speech, he himself was going crazy. Everyone was dizzy listening to him. He was really going to run all over the realm of gods. Seeing Yin Nuashing's gloomy look, everyone helplessly shook their heads. It really was a case of capable people do more work. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to do it. Lin Sheng and the others helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "Well, we don't know much about you. Although we don't know how busy you are, we can only wish you the best." Oh, Yin Nuashing laughed heartily. He gave a thumbs up and said, "See you in the Little Divine Lands." This time, it's really the Little Divine Lands. You guys will also go to the Little Divine Lands before us. I will also go to the Little Divine Lands after I'm done with some things. Everyone laughed and nodded. The Little Divine Lands was a grand and glorious place. Without him, it would be much less fun. Just as Lin Sheng and the others were about to leave, Yu who was running wildly on the golden platform, suddenly ran back from the edge of the platform. She threw herself at Yin Nuashing's side and wrapped her 2 jade-like hands around his neck. She said in a light voice, Brother, there's someone watching us." Lin Sheng and the others were about to leave. When they heard this, they instinctively felt that something seemed to have happened. They couldn't help but stop and turn their gazes. Yin Nuashing was dragged by Yu to the edge of the golden platform. Everyone hurriedly followed. Yu stood at the edge of the platform and looked down. Then she stretched out her hand and pointed at the edge of the heaven abyss. Everyone also looked over. At the edge of the heaven abyss, on the top of the mountain that had been neatly cut in half, a figure appeared. He didn't seem to be wearing anything special. In fact, he was dressed in somewhat ancient clothing. He looked like a middle-aged man. Golden blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. Only a pair of black eye sockets remained. Half of his head was missing. White brain matter and blood mixed together and covered half of his face. He looked ferocious and terrifying. Those black eye sockets were looking at Yin Nuashing and the others, who were looking down from the sky. Just one look was enough to make everyone shudder violently. A strong desire to live made them take a step back. They patted their chests and gasped for breath. Cold sweat soaked their backs. That person was too scary. What is that thing? Chu Yingjian was so scared that she hurriedly shrank behind Yin Nuashing. Her voice changed. "You scare me to death. I felt like I almost died when I saw it." "Oh, it's nothing." Yin Nuashing wasn't affected much. Her ancient heavenly god bloodline and God's mark were roaring and emitting a mysterious wave. She turned her head and saw that everyone was retreating. She was also stunned. She shook her head and said, "It's a god's corpse that has gained sentience after death. It's not wrong to say that it's a dead spirit. It's a god's corpse that was buried here back then. The god's corpse hasn't dissipated. It hasn't changed." As soon as the 2 words God's corpse were mentioned, everyone sucked in a big breath of cold air. God's corpse, a god's corpse. Did a god fall here? Originally, such a powerful creature was incomparably powerful in their eyes. It was an invincible existence. However, after learning a lot of things from Yinhua planet, they would always learn about the death of gods, the fall of gods, and so on. For a moment, they felt that their faith had been shattered. At this time, when they heard that a god had fallen here and his corpse had mutated, they could not help but sigh. In the end, countless heroes and countless gods, according to the eternal law of birth, old age, illness, and death, still passed away. Well, I'm not in the best state right now. Otherwise, I could help to expiate his soul. He was more or less a god when he was alive. It's blasphemy to suffer such misfortune after death. It's too sad for a god. Unaware of everyone's sadness, Yin Nuashing looked directly at that person on the mountain peak below. She blinked and opened her mouth to speak, which was transmitted from the platform to the mountain peak. The voice was a little ethereal and contained the power of divine authority. After the god's corpse heard it, Yin Nuashing didn't know if he still had the ability to hear. Anyway, he was an undead spirit and had some intelligence. For the time being, she assumed that he had heard it. Then, the god's corpse lowered his head stiffly, and his body fell from half of the mountain peak into the dark abyss like a leaf that had been blown off by a strong wind. Boom! The earth suddenly trembled, and half of the mountain suddenly collapsed. Countless rocks and trees rolled down, falling down towards the bottom of Heaven Abyss in a very strange trajectory. After receiving Yin Nuashing's signal, everyone dared to stick their little heads out and look at the edge of Heaven Abyss where smoke and dust billowed. When they couldn't see the god's corpse, they heaved a sigh of relief. What just happened? Nothing. I just used the language of the mythological era to chat with it. Yin Nuashing smiled and shook her head. Then she said, the aura that emanated from the abyss was that god's aura that couldn't dissipate. Now that it has become an undead spirit, that aura is mixed with cold resentment. Even an emperor god can't stay here for long. Well, there's something in the abyss that ordinary people can't enjoy, and I'm too lazy to do anything about it. When I have time, come back and release its soul. Well, no one has set foot in this place for a long time. It probably sensed the remnant power of divine authority in me. It's very, very weak. That's why it came out on a whim to take a look. Yin Nuashing scratched her cheek and said, it seems that I have to seal and hide the power of divine authority. The god can still recognize it, even if I don't release it. Everyone spread their hands to show that they didn't understand. Yin Nuashing smiled, sighed, and shook her head. Now that there was nothing else to do, Lin Sheng and the others stayed to watch for a while longer. Then, they took their leave and walked toward the black spatial gate. They had their own paths to walk, and they had to part ways eventually. At the very least, they had to spend some time in the academy before they had the right to talk about the future. Jun Luo, he came up to Yin Nuashing and whispered a few words to her. Then, she left with a smile under the strange gazes of the girls, leaving behind a confused Yin Nuashing. Little Star, the Grand Elder, and the Temple Master seem to have come. I heard that God Ning Zun has found out that we're here, so he's rushing over with thousands of firepower. Yao Hua's sudden words made Yin Nuashing, who was originally a little depressed, feel awkward. Xian and the others also looked into the distance. A year had passed, and the Nine-Deity Temple was still the same. They knew that Yin Nuashing was in such a dangerous place, so they rushed over without saying anything. Yin Nuashing scratched her cheek and laughed dryly. Her expression was a little strange. Well, I have a lot of things to do back at the Nine-Deity Temple. I have to take care of their bodies, too. Everyone knew that she was referring to the other 9 ancestors of the Nine-Deity Temple. Quarter Moon was once a friend of life and death. They just didn't know if Temple Master Jean and the Golden Queen would faint from excitement after hearing this news. Suddenly thinking of someone, Yin Nuashing looked at Chu Yingjian with a strange expression. What about you? The trip to the secret realm is over. What do you plan to do? Originally, she didn't seem to have any special purpose or anything. Back then, it seemed that she had come to this mystic realm for a trip, so it was just a coincidence that they met. Now that the trip to the mystic realm was over, it seemed that she should be leaving. He didn't think that she would choose to follow behind him. Hearing that she was suddenly mentioned, Chu Yingxian's jade-like hand that was playing with her hair paused. Mei Mao turned around mischievously and suddenly smiled. Idiot, do you want to come to my house to play? Your house. Yin Nuoxing and the others were stunned. Speaking of which, they didn't know much about Chu Yingxian. Other than knowing her personality, they knew that she came from the Seven Elements realm. Her father also came from the Seven Elements realm. She also had a certain reputation in the God realm. Other than that, they didn't know anything about her background. They didn't investigate it either. Well, my house is in the Kuan Yuan region. You're going to the Kuan Yuan region too, right? Chu Yingxian grinned and said. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while and thought about it. All right, but I have to go back to the 9 divine temples first. The great chaos formation in the divine prefecture is woven through the pillars of creation of the 9 divine temples. According to the order, I have to repair that piece first, then go to the Kuan Yuan region, then the Ganyuan region, then the Extreme Plain region, then the Taiyuan region, and finally the small divine prefecture to arrange the destination. When I go to the Ganyuan region, I have to go to the Yanli Institute to complete the trial. After talking for a while, Yin Nuoxing raised his head and looked at Chu Yingxian. So, when I go to the Kuan Yuan region, I will send you home, right? Well, Chu Yingxian tilted her head and smiled sweetly. Let's talk about it when we get back. I'm not in a hurry. It's just that my stupid father sent me a message and asked me to go home. Well, anyway, it's not the first time I sneaked out of my house. My stupid father knows that he can't control me, so he can only send me a message occasionally to ask me to go back and see if I'm still alive. Chu Yingxian said with a smile. Yin Nuoxing and the others were speechless. It must be hard to have such a daughter, right? Chapter 928. Outside of the heavenly abyss, far away from the terrifying energy below the abyss, Yin Nuoxing's group used a black portal to arrive at the edge of the heavenly abyss. Just as Yao Hua was about to use the token to contact Empress Jean and the others, something happened before they could even stand firm. It wasn't a big deal to them, but to Yin Nuoxing, it was an extremely serious matter. She had never expected that the self-sealing seal would only last for such a short period of time. They hadn't stayed on the golden platform for long, perhaps less than a quarter of an hour. The energy in her body had already started to riot, and it was an exaggerated riot. It was better to say that the energy in her body had started to move on its own without her control. The speed at which it circulated in her meridians was extremely fast, with the head connecting with the tail, one cycle after another. Ding! Like the sound of a long sword lightly piercing a gem, an extremely clear sound rang out. After that, Yin Nuoxing's beautiful face changed. She furrowed her brows tightly and clenched her teeth. The energy of stars, elemental energy, soul energy, spiritual energy, and spatial energy were all rioting within her body. The golden energy that represented divinity was rapidly moving within her body. The energy carrier seemed to have sensed that it was finally about to break the shackles that had existed for a long time. It let out a high-pitched shriek, cutting through the silence of the space. The energy of stars rushed out of the energy carrier on its own, spiraling to the side. Beside the carrier, there were dozens of doors standing there. However, it didn't seem to care about them, as it directly carried out the actions of advancing from the demigod rank to the demigod rank. The energy was extracted, compressed, and changed. The huge amount of energy gushed out from the energy carrier in an unending stream, causing those doors to creak as they collided. At the same time, within his soul, the seal placed in the spiritual light tower started to disintegrate by itself. The black speck hidden in the deepest part of the light essence seemed to have smelled the scent of freedom. The large-scale changes that originated from his spiritual strength made it extremely excited and impatiently rushed out of the prison. It even gave up on the light essence that was slowly being eroded by it, gushing towards all directions of his soul. However, before the black speck could disperse too far, his soul was suddenly enveloped by a golden sacred flame, permeating towards every corner of his soul. This caused the black speck to tremble, as it felt an extremely terrifying pressure from the golden flame. It was a complete opposition, as if it was its natural enemy. It took a long time to describe, but all of these things happened at the same time. The darkness in the soul started to riot due to the impending advancement, and the divinity also started to surge at this moment, opposing each other. In the energy carrier, the doors to the demigod rank were closing with a loud bang. The energy carrier poured out all of the energy, and at the same time, it was also compressing it in the body. The star energy that Yun Nuashing possessed was the purest origin energy of the world other than the power of the demigod rank. It could accelerate the mutation, but it was very difficult, especially in the current situation where he couldn't control the situation at all. He also didn't have time to make any minute adjustments, and could only watch as the usually docile star energy messed around in his body. If it was an ordinary person, their eyes would have already rolled back, their legs would have kicked the ground, and they would have directly kicked the bucket. Regardless of how powerful Yun Nuashing was, and how out of the norm he was, his body was still very fragile. Even if this degree of fragility was countless times stronger than other people, it was still the same. The impact from his body, the impact from his own body, the intensity of the energy immediately exceeded what he could bear, causing his eyes to roll back and faint. Boom! When everyone came to their senses, they saw that Yun Nuashing had already fainted from the pain and was floating in the sky. Pillars of energy burst out from his body as if they were queuing up. There were starlight pillars, elemental light pillars, and flame pillars condensed from divine flames. The energy was extremely violent, and when the dark chaotic elements burst out, everyone was hit by the shock wave before they could react. Oh, it's starting now. Oh no, little star's condition isn't good. He has suppressed it for too long and finally can't suppress it anymore. Can he make it through? Yuanshi swung his sleeves and stabilized his body. He looked at the place where the light was bursting out with extreme seriousness. He was already a beginner god-level expert. Although he was only a divine son, his sensing ability was many times stronger than before. At this moment, he could sense what was happening to Yun Nuashing's body. It was as if all kinds of inflammable and explosive materials were mixed together, and they were constantly being stimulated. However, they were acting independently of each other. How could an ordinary person withstand this kind of fragmentation? Little star, Xian was also anxious. She also couldn't do anything. Everyone present couldn't do anything. That kind of violent energy reaction, even if almost everyone present was a beginner god-level expert, when faced with such a terrifying energy reaction, they could only watch or protect him. That kind of energy, if they got closer, would sweep them to the edge of the sky. This is a monster. How can a second seal's body contain so much energy? This is impossible. This is beyond the limit of the energy carrier. Chu Yingzhan pulled her robe and retreated continuously. The energy storm that swept over blew on her body, making her feel suffocated. She only felt better after retreating for 1,000 meters. Mei Mao looked at Yun Nuashing, who was in the center of the energy explosion, in shock. This guy was indeed different from ordinary people. He was different from ordinary people from head to toe. How could such a terrifying energy capacity be possessed by a demon-level expert? This capacity was almost comparable to them, who had just advanced to the beginner god level. At this point, everyone understood a lot of things. For example, other people could fight against people of a higher level, but he could fight against people of a higher level. Moreover, he could fight against people of a higher level. Moreover, there was a natural chasm between them. When it came to fighting with one's life, he could fight against people of a higher level than him. For example, the exaggerated 12 elements, the exaggerated energy carrier capacity, and the exaggerated degree of energy purity. These things were directly related to one's strength. When placed on him, every one of them was many times stronger than an ordinary person's. Not to mention the things like cultivation techniques and secret techniques that he cultivated, as well as the heaven-defying things like divine weapons and divine weapons. With all of these things, it would be strange if he couldn't fight against people of a higher level. Everyone could understand these things with just a little thought. After they understood, they threw these useless thoughts to the back of their minds. They nervously looked at Yun Nuashing, who was violently advancing. The energy that supported his advancement all came from the small space within his body that had been imbued with an unknown amount of energy. At this moment, it was pouring out like a flood. Under the effects of the elements, divine flames, and various other factors, it was almost refined in an instant. Then, it drilled into the energy carrier and was thrown out by the energy carrier. His aura also rapidly rose under everyone's shocked gazes. Second seal of the demon level. Fourth seal. Sixth seal. Sixth seal. Sixth seal. Seventh seal. Seventh seal. Ninth seal. Ninth seal. Looking at the degree of the tyrannical energy rising, everyone swallowed their cries. This speed of advancement was as if he had taken drugs. However, along with the rise of his aura, there was also that black aura, that dark aura that originated from his soul. Yin could not help but tighten her dress. At first, the dark aura and the divine aura were at the same level. However, as Yin Nuashing advanced in the demon level, the violent dark aura also rose, causing everyone's expressions to turn serious. They subconsciously condensed their energy, but when they thought that this trouble was caused by Yin Nuashing's own body, they felt a little discouraged and helpless. There was really nothing they could do. They were considered lucky, as their souls were not contaminated by the demonic aura or darkness due to their cultivation. However, Yin Nuashing's soul had been contaminated by the demonic aura. Not only had he turned black, but he had also condensed a dark origin seed. Didn't this mean that this guy was completely black from the inside out? The pitch-black aura was about to occupy his entire soul. At this moment, his body and soul were being controlled by others. In his spiritual world, Ziyi and the others were on guard, guarding the last area. They used their tyrannical strength to forcibly resist the pervasive dark aura, preventing it from completely contaminating Yin Nuashing's soul. As long as it was not completely contaminated by the dark aura, the demigod divine baptism would cleanse it completely. Buzz swoosh. A loud sound suddenly came from the distant sky, causing Ziyin and the others, who were vigilant of their surroundings, to tremble. They hurriedly turned their gazes. There were actually people coming to this place at this time. Just as everyone thought that the commotion caused by the Yin Nua star had attracted some people and was about to do their best to stop them, the group of people in the distance appeared in front of them in a flash, causing them to be stunned. After being stunned for a moment, joy suddenly exploded in their eyes. It was not for anything else, but because the group of people who had arrived was Ning Qinshue's group. Ning Qinshue's jade-like hand stroked her long sea-blue hair. She had just stopped, but before she could say anything, Yao Hua let out an extremely exaggerated shout and then rushed towards the Golden Queen and the others. When everyone saw how exaggerated he was, they rolled their eyes but did not move. They all knew that this guy had a lot to say, and now he would not be happy if he did not say it out loud. As for the others, they were still very serious as they stared at Yin Nuashing, guarding against any problems with this guy. However, even if there was a problem, they could not solve it. Ning Qinshuo directly swept past Yao Hua with a leap and came to Ziyin side. Looking at Yin Nuashing, who was in an energy storm, Mei Mao paused and hurriedly asked, "How is he? What happened?" Thus, Yao Hua spoke until the river waters surged and his saliva flew everywhere. He spat out all his experiences in the past year in one breath. On the other side, Ming and Ziyin also explained everything clearly. Then, Ning Qinshuo and the others who had just come to rescue were all dumbfounded. The huge amount of information directly rushed into their minds crazily. In the end, they were all a little dizzy from listening to it. Roar. An extremely powerful dark aura swept out from Yin Nuashing's body like a storm, wreaking havoc in this area. The power of the 10 elements condensed into a ball and danced wildly in the sky, as if it was reflecting Yao Hua's words and testifying for them. This roar also suddenly woke up the Golden Queen and the others. Everyone clenched their fists and suddenly became nervous. However, their heads were still dizzy. Although they knew that Yao Hua would not say anything to amuse them at this time, This amount of information was really too much. Even if they wanted to believe it, they had to slowly accept it. 5 elements realm. No wonder I could not even sense the location of the scepter during that time. Ning Qianxue seemed to be the one who accepted it the fastest and did not have much doubt. Huh. During that time, that is, when you went to the 5 elements realm, the connection between me and my scepter was completely severed. In the past, even if I was in the starry sky and Little Star was in the realm of the gods, although I could not contact it, I could still sense where my scepter was. However, you went to the 5 elements realm and crossed the 3 layers of the realm barrier. The connection between me and my scepter was directly severed. At that time, I thought that you all had caused some trouble in the mystery land and did not think about it. I did not expect, Ning Qianxue said. Yao Hua also took out the coffins of the 9 ancestors very straightforwardly. This time, the Golden Queen and the others had no choice but to believe it. Yuan Shi and the others had never seen it before. At this time, they also turned their gazes curiously. It was 9 huge, purple, diamond-shaped crystals, surging with immortal power. 9 bodies with their eyes closed were sealed inside. After dozens of eras, those bodies were still exuding strong power, surging in the crystals. However, there was no breath of life or soul anymore. Their souls were no longer in the crystals. So, they are now in the process of advancing, crossing the barrier between the demon level and the demigod level in one go. Palace Master Jean had been looking at Yin Nuoxing. When he heard that she was Quarter Moon, the former 10th Palace Master, he was also stunned for a moment. However, he did not think much of it and quickly paid attention to the current situation. Can I succeed? It makes me nervous. Yao Hua scratched his head and looked nervously at Yin Nuoxing. The latter's breath was becoming more and more majestic. Logically speaking, he should have advanced to the demigod level long ago. However, the smell of his breath was still at the demon level. The dark breath was getting thicker and thicker, making everyone nervous. Just when everyone felt that the dark breath was about to fill up, the situation suddenly reversed. The golden flames that had been suppressed all this time suddenly exploded from Yin Nuoxing's body. At the same time, the breath that had stopped at the peak of the demon level started moving again and squeezed into the demigod level. The golden divine flames also became thicker and thicker as his breath increased. As Yin Nuoxing advanced to the demigod level, the self-disintegrating action of his energy carrier also stopped. The new star power mixed with the 10 elements and the dark breath condensed into new energy and poured into the energy carrier. The cold dark breath actually seeped into it. As the golden flames grew stronger, the cold dark breath on Yin Nuoxing's body gradually withered. If one looked closer, they would see that the golden flames were devouring the dark breath. The dark breath that was devoured quickly disintegrated and disappeared as if it was purified by the divine flames. It scuttled around Yin Nuoxing's body and occupied his entire body. His skin was originally as white as ice crystals, but now it was shining with a golden luster. The divine patterns on the divine body of Yin Nuoxing also sensed the changes in its master and began to stretch again. They extended over his body, and a complete pattern was drawn on the right side of his face. It looked a little demonic. The golden and red blood flowing in his veins was completely ignited by the golden flames. The divine imprints that were engraved on every corner of his body also emitted an extremely bright light. Hidden in the blood were golden energy patterns that couldn't be seen or recognized by the naked eye. At this moment, these patterns were also releasing an extremely dazzling light. Then, the golden and red blood finally turned completely golden. A vast, majestic aura slowly emerged from the blood. The pressure wasn't obvious. It seemed that the other people present didn't sense it. However, Ning Qianxue still sensed it, and her heart trembled. Mei Mao looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was wrapped in all kinds of light, with shock and uncertainty. Her sea blue eyes pierced through the layers of obstacles and directly saw Yin Nuoxing, who was floating in the light pillar with his eyes closed like a sleeping beauty. She said, "Great success of the ancient heavenly god's bloodline. Boom." The moment Yin Nuoxing's aura reached its peak, a powerful wave suddenly spread out in all directions. It was like a shock wave, carrying an unparalleled and ancient majestic aura. Even Ning Qinxue couldn't withstand the pressure that contained the might of a heavenly god and was pushed back a distance. At this moment, it was as if the heavens and the earth were about to submit to it. This wasn't quite right because the moment the wave ended, the sound of rolling thunder suddenly came from the sky. The earth and the air were trembling. Everyone could clearly feel that the surrounding temperature seemed to have increased by several levels. Moreover, the elemental power was completely chaotic and violent, condensing into large tornadoes in the air. The power of the stars came from beyond the heavens, penetrating through a great distance and descending on this place. Is she going to undergo the tribulation? The scene of the sea of stars filled Ming's jade-like hands tightly clenched. Yin Nuoxing didn't seem to have woken up yet. Undergoing the tribulation now wasn't a good situation. Buzz. Everyone also guessed what was going to happen, and their expressions changed. However, they were no longer worried because they saw a beam of starlight that traversed the heavens and the earth suddenly descend from the sky, enveloping Yin Nuoxing. At the same time, whether it was the rolling thunder or the violent elements, they were all sucked into the beam of starlight in an instant. Then, the world became quiet. It was so quiet that it was as if nothing had happened. The sea of light also disappeared at this moment. Everyone was speechless. This fellow was really used to undergoing the tribulation. At this moment, he could directly devour the tribulation that he was supposed to undergo. Undergoing the tribulation should follow the rules of the heavens and the earth, because of a disturbance in the rules caused by the overly special energy and the further strengthening of life. Little Star directly devoured the chaotic power of the rules of the heavens and the earth. The heavenly tribulation that was supposed to be painful, those are all tribulations derived from the rules and order. But he directly ate them as nutrients. Ning Qinxue saw this process very clearly. Even she felt very speechless. He avoided the suffering and directly obtained the advancement of the heavenly tribulation. Can this be done? The Golden Queen and the others were very calm. We are already used to it. As Yin Nuoxing completed his advancement, all the energy that was rumbling in his body once again calmed down. The cold, dark aura and the golden divine flames disappeared very completely, so much so that no one knew whether this was considered a success or not. Looking at his aura, he was now standing at the demigod 9th refinement stage. On the surface, there seemed to be no problem, but they were afraid that he would suddenly go berserk. There were really not many people here who could control him. They waited in such a strange manner for a few minutes, and no one went up to take a look. After a while, Yin Nuoxing slowly opened his eyes. A ray of familiar, colorful light shone from his gradually raised eyelids. It was not mixed with any violence or violent aura. His colorful eyes were still dazzling. His originally exquisite facial features were now even clearer and more beautiful. His skin was so smooth that it could be used as a mirror. It seemed that this divine transformation was already merciful by not turning him into a girl. Anyway, when everyone saw his appearance, they could not help but spit out mouthfuls of saliva. Xian had advanced to the demigod stage, completed the divine transformation, and became beautiful and had the aura of a fairy. Why did Yin Nuoxing also transform in this direction? Yin Nuoxing raised his head in a daze and looked at himself. His cheeks twitched. After a while, as if he had accepted his fate, he let out a long sigh. Then he observed his soul from head to toe. After a while, he said with some relief, "Fortunately, I finally succeeded. At least I did not fail this time. If he messed up this time, he would probably go crazy. He had already failed twice in a row. This could not be considered the last method. If he also failed, he might suddenly lose his direction. Even if he was once a demigod, he would still feel at a loss. Fortunately, the shackles that had bound him for a few years had finally been removed. From now on, he would be able to roam freely." Chapter 9:29. Little brother, you're awake?" Princess Jean, the Water Empress, and the others came forward. The latter used Mei Mao to look at Yun Nuoxing from head to toe. With her eyesight, she could naturally see that Yun Nuoxing's current condition was unprecedentedly good. Perhaps it was because he had broken through the shackles, but the smile on his face was so big that it could almost reach the sky at this moment. It cannot be concealed at all. Ning Qianxue directly rushed forward and checked him from head to toe. When she found that there was indeed no problem, she heaved a sigh of relief. Then she held his pretty face with her jade hands and squeezed it into a funny shape. Yun Nuoxing resisted for a while and mumbled something that could not be understood. However, after a moment, he knew that his resistance was futile. He rolled his eyes and stopped struggling. Palace Master Jean appeared to be calmer. He coughed dryly to make the unscrupulous crowd quiet down. He waved his hand and was about to say something when Princess Jean took the lead and moved forward. Mei Mao looked at Yun Nuoxing strangely and said, "Hey, do you think we should call you Ancestor or Little Star?" The group of people behind him suddenly collapsed. Yun Nuoxing's face was filled with black lines. No wonder Yao Hua and the others would say such things. It turned out that the adults in their family were also so frivolous. However, he already knew this. However, even if he knew, when these words were pressed on his face, it still made his cheeks twitch. In this life, at least for now, I will still be Yun Nuoxing. There is no need to reveal the identity of Quartermoon. Sister Jean, let's just be how we were before. Yun Nuoxing smiled faintly. Palace Master Jean was still calm. At this moment, when he heard him say this, he went forward and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, you have advanced to the demigod level. You are not far from the beginner god level." Yun Nuoxing shrugged. The demigod level was 9 changes. It would not be a problem for him to advance to the beginner god level anytime. As for when he would completely step into that level, he could only say that it was up to fate. After all, he was not in a hurry. After a moment, Yun Nuoxing told him about the reconstruction of the guardian formation of the divine realm. Although the 9 divine temples were now all gathered in the northern wilderness, the pillars of creation that they were in charge of were still erected in various places in the divine prefecture. The strange space where the pillars of creation were kept could be directly accessed from the temples. After the completion of the restoration, the formation would still be activated in the divine prefecture. It would not change the formation to be activated in the divine prefecture. Guardian formation. Palace Master Jean nodded. Palace Master Jean nodded. The information left behind by the ancestors did mention this guardian formation, but we have never found its remains. Perhaps our method is wrong. You may have to work on this yourself. If you need help, just let us know. The 9 deities' halls will do our best. The group did not stay in this place for long. It was quite convenient to return to the 9 divine temples. Even Yao Hua and the others had a way to quickly return to the 9 divine temples. Therefore, in just 1 or 2 minutes, the group returned to the 9 divine temples through the portal that was unique to them. The news of Yun Nuoxing's return to the 9 divine temples was still flying around in the upper echelons. It was a piece of news that had to be spread immediately. The disciples who were cultivating in the training grounds under the sun were completely unaware of it. They only knew that there was a sudden commotion in the quiet main hall, causing many disciples to be confused. After looking at each other for a moment, they shook their heads and ignored it. Anyway, it was normal for their elders to be crazy all day long. The news about Yun Nuoxing was also quickly passed to all the upper echelons of the 9 divine temples. They were all excited. In any case, Jean Jinwang was drooling. Hee, Little Star finally has the metal element. Hee. Seeing him laughing like an idiot, Princess Jean decisively expressed that she did not know this guy. "Oh, I'm finally home." In the main hall of the Fire God Temple, there was a huge hall that was decorated like a paradise. It was floating in the air, and it was no different from fairyland. In fact, it was just a relatively ordinary hall. Every temple in the 9 divine temples had it. It was used to entertain distinguished guests and when their own god's sons were resting. At this time, Yao Hua and a large group of people had just entered. All of them used the speed of sound to sprint. They bumped into the sofa to grab a seat or rolled on the carpet. Shui Ling, and a group of girls sat elegantly on another row of sofas. Then, they collectively looked at the group of boys with disdain. You're all a group of gods. Can't you be a little more serious? Princess Jean covered her face speechlessly. What kind of group of weirdos did they teach? Which one of them came home to grab the sofa first? This group of gods that suddenly appeared made the elders of the 9 divine temples smile from ear to ear. Yao Hua and the others were not even 30 years old, but they had already entered the beginner god realm. This kind of achievement could break a lot of records anywhere. Moreover, it was estimated that they would not be surpassed, even at the end of the world. Under normal circumstances, even if the 9 divine temples used all their efforts to cultivate a person with extremely high talent, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for them to enter the beginner god realm without more than 100 years. The demigod realm and the hurdle from the demigod realm to the beginner god realm were easily crossed by them, using the special characteristics of the Jiesu secret realm. With the assistance of the sky god realm, it was really difficult for them not to advance. After listening to the details of what had happened in the Jiesu secret realm, including the 2 sky god realm dojos, the great elders of the king of gods, and the others carefully checked this group of little guys again. When they found that there was no overdraft of talent that they were worried about, they heaved a sigh of relief. You guys really have to thank Little Star this time. Without the Sky God Realm Dojo, no matter how special the Jiesu secret realm was, you guys might be stuck at the demigod realm. Palace Master Jean immediately understood the most important part. Ordinary people would not be able to advance to the beginner god realm without dozens of years of accumulation. In the end, the harvest from the Sky God Realm Dojo was more important. Why don't you just cultivate for 100 years before coming out? At that time, you would probably have advanced to the divine underworld realm. Princess Jean said faintly, causing the gods and goddesses of the 9 divine temples to tremble and shake their heads vigorously. If they really cultivated in the golden cage for 100 years, they would go crazy from holding it in. Seeing that they were shaking their heads, Princess Jean could not help but roll her eyes. Without Little Star, you guys still want to come out in a year? You guys are really lucky to not have been imprisoned for 10,000 years. Everyone smiled bitterly. They did not know whether to laugh or cry. When they talked about other things, Palace Master Lei muttered to himself for a while. He also had the appearance of a young man, about 20 years old. He did not look too different from Yao Hua and the others in age. His delicate face was not as stern and dignified as the great elder of the Thunder God Palace. At a glance, he was full of friendliness. At this moment, he muttered to himself for a while, and his clear voice was slightly low. Dark element. This element has already completely disappeared from the realm of the gods. The element on Little Star should be the last of it. Moreover, it is the primordial chaos element inherited from the primogenitor. I don't know if this is a disaster or a blessing. You guys do not speak carelessly, especially Yao Hua. When you talk nonsense, don't be impulsive and say it out loud. Palace Master Guang also reminded them sternly. What happened in the ancient era was recorded in detail in the dusty history of the 9 divine temples. They also knew how much damage the dark element had caused at that time. Those who had seen it would be shrouded in the shadow of the dark element for their entire lives. It was almost synonymous with fear. Being singled out for a lecture, Yao Hua shrunk his head and could only nod hurriedly. They also knew that this matter was of great importance. It would be better to keep this matter to themselves. However, we still have to prepare for the worst. What if what happened in the ancient era happens to Little Star again? Palace Master Hua also pondered. As soon as he said this, everyone nodded. Such a thing was not impossible. There are not many people who still knew about the dark element, but there were definitely still some. Those transcendental great forces that had been passed down from the ancient era also had many masters of the dark element. However, after the incident in Little Divine Prefecture, they were either hidden away or eliminated. Seeing that their masters were nervously talking about something, The group of young people stuck out their tongues. Jining raised her jade-like neck and looked to the side. Only then did she realize that Yin Nuoxing and the others were not here. Xian and Yuan, she were also not here. She could not help but ask curiously, "Where are Little Star and the others?" "They are at the Pillars of Creation. Do you want to go and take a look?" "Well, there's a portal on the 6th floor of the main hall. You will see it when you walk over." Princess Jean waved her hand and said, "Forget it. I will go and take a look too." The group of people nodded and then squeezed out of the hall. Yao Hua and the others were speechless as they watched their elders disappear all of a sudden. After pausing for a moment, they reluctantly got up from the sofa and walked towards the door. This was a boundless grassland. In the distance, there were undulating mountains. The blue sky and white clouds were clear and transparent. 2 suns hung high in the sky side by side. At the end of the grassland, there was a calm lake. Although it was called a lake, its area could not be seen at a glance. It was more like a majestic sea. On the surface of the sea, there were huge black metal pillars that formed a circle around the sea. In fact, this space represented the size of the entire divine prefecture. It was not as small as it looked. The distance between the 9 pillars of creation was also quite far. It was only the visual effect that made them look very close. However, if they were out of this space and exposed to the real world, they would be able to see one pillar, but not the other. This was not the first time they had seen the pillars of creation. However, seeing such a magnificent creation again, Xian and the others could not help but exclaim. Then they sat in a row on the grassland and looked at the sky calmly. In the sky, a huge black magic formation appeared. Its huge area covered the entire sky. Whether it was the sea or the grassland, everything was covered in it. The 9 pillars of creation were evenly divided into 9 points. The magic formation was somewhat fragmented. Transparent cracks densely covered the huge black magic formation. It looked like this magic formation was on the verge of collapse. Even so, it stubbornly revealed a powerful energy. Even if it did not explode, it made people who sensed it shudder with fear. It was as if once the magic formation was activated, they would be buried under its power. The black magic formation floated high in the sky. Densely packed, huge magic formations spread evenly below it. Golden lines surged out from the numerous magic formations and endlessly drilled into the black magic formation. Yin Nuoxing's 6 wings stretched to a size of 10 feet. He floated at the edge of the sea and stretched out his right hand to control the huge number of magic formations. He sensed the situation in the black magic formation. Yishi waited quietly beside him, ready to help at any time. After so many years, Yin Nuoxing could not help but sigh when he sensed the great chaos formation of the divine prefecture again and saw how damaged it was. Back then, this was the work of him and the others. Countless efforts were poured into it. After being used once, it was destroyed because of the energy overload. This made his heart ache. It was even more difficult to repair it later. Now that he saw it again, he could not help but sigh. When the Jean Princess, Yao Hua, and the others rushed in, they saw such a scene. Yuan, she was lying on the grassland, basking in the sun. When he saw the movement, he looked back and saw everyone hanging upside down. He could not help but smile and say, "Oh, you're all here. Come and sit." After a while, the group sat together in a row. All of them did not say a word and quietly watched the movement in the sky. So that's how it is. No wonder it couldn't be repaired back then. After a long time, Yin Nuoxing opened his eyes and muttered to himself. His eyes shone with an indescribable light. "Brother Nuo, is there a result?" Yishi stood up from the sky and asked as she patted the non-existent dust off her body. Yin Nuoxing nodded and raised his head to look at the chaos formation and said, "When it was activated in the past, the violent energy of the 5 formations connected together because the power was too strong, it damaged their own internal structure and even swallowed and destroyed a lot of the laws of heaven and earth. But this did not affect the original laws of heaven and earth." After pondering for a while, Yin Nuoxing continued, "Let's put it simply. Let's assume that the 2 suns in the sky are the rules and order of the God world. At this moment, one of the suns suddenly disappeared. It disappeared on the surface, but its sunlight still shone on the god world. Therefore, nothing in the god world was affected. In other words, Yishi stroked her chin and said, the 5 formations back then devoured a part of the power of the laws. Because the formations were originally connected to the rules and order of heaven and earth of the god world. Even if a part of it was devoured, it did not completely destroy it. Therefore, the rules and order of heaven and earth of the god world were still intact. It was just that a part of the laws had moved to another place and did not stay in its original place. Yin Nuashing nodded. He pointed at the transparent cracks on the black formation and said, those are the wounds of the laws. They contain a large number of law fragments. The law fragments of the ancient era are no longer useful. They are the laws of the ancient era that have been preserved. I cannot repair them back then because I did not understand them back then. I did not feel anything wrong when I looked at them back then. I only knew that it was damage caused by energy overload, but I did not know where it was damaged. It's like you are sick, but you do not necessarily know what it is. Yin Nuashing said, then why do you understand it now? She was a little puzzled. Because the laws have changed. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and pointed at the sky. It is no longer the ancient era. The remaining laws and orders of the ancient era have been removed by quarter moon's God's declaration. The ancient era has truly come to an end. It is now a new era, and new laws and orders have long since reigned in the skies. However, the laws entangled in the formations are the laws of the ancient era. The 2 auras are the same, and I cannot feel any difference. It is only now that the new laws and orders have been born that I can feel the obvious difference. Oh. Yishi pondered for a moment and nodded after indicating that she understood. Then, she looked up at him and asked, how do we repair it? It won't be a problem to extract all the rule power that once belonged to the ancient era and replace it with the current rule power. It won't take long. The pillar of creation has such a function. We just need to guide it. Yin Nuashing smiled. Speaking of which, Brother Nua, what is the deal with the pillar of creation? Yishi could not help but asked the question that she had been holding back for a long time. The pillar of creation was not left behind by Quarter Moon and the others. They were only the maintenance staff of the pillar of creation. They also borrowed the power of the pillar of creation to do something. But what was the deal with this pillar? That's a bit complicated. Yin Nuashing scratched his head as a look of reminiscence flashed across his eyes. After a moment, he said, back then, when Quarter Moon first saw the pillar of creation, she was only a mid-tier god. In fact, the pillar came to her on its own. It was very amazing. The pillar of creation did not have any intelligence or spirituality. At that time, it directly used an ethereal voice transmission to guide Quarter Moon to its door to repair the dark element that was about to be extinguished. Oh, by the way, because of the dark element explosion that formed the small divine land, a large amount of dark element energy was hidden under the divine realm. Although the dark element has now been channeled into the secret realms and various small worlds, a part of it was still absorbed by the pillars of creation in various parts of the divine realm. So, even if the dark element no longer exists in the divine realm, the dark element seal in the pillars will not break. However, in recent years, the light element has become weaker and weaker, so it had no choice but to repair it. You can guess what happened after that. Quarter Moon got the title of maintenance worker because of that. Yes, she's responsible for maintaining the greatest secret in the divine realm. It could be a secret that originated from the Dark Age or even a mythological era. Who knows? Yin Nuashing spread his hands. After discussing with Yi Shi for a while, the two were ready to act. In truth, the act was much simpler than expected. Yin Nuashing controlled the 9 pillars of creation and made them all rumble as they absorbed the primordial era's law fragments mixed in the chaos formation. On the other hand, Yishi was mobilizing the precepts of this world, slowly guiding them into the chaos formation according to Yin Nuashing's instructions. They were just starting the process, and the pillars of creation were already moving on their own automatically absorbing the ancient precepts in the formation and replacing them with the current precepts of the world. However, the commotion was much bigger than expected. The 9 black metal pillars were now emitting 9-colored divine runes. They were like 9 giant rune pillars, and the rumbling energy made the world rumble. The sea below them was stirred up by huge waves, as if it was going to smash the sky down. Streaks of starlight streaked across the space and descended. In the rolling sky, distorted ripples appeared in everyone's eyes. The transparent cracks in the black formation in the sky slowly dissipated, turning into a white aura that was injected into one of the pillars of creation. Then, the distorted sky slowly descended. From afar, it looked like a funnel, and the bottom of the funnel touched the center of the black formation. Strands of golden lines merged into the black formation and then quietly disappeared. The earth-shattering commotion made it impossible for everyone to lie down on the grass. They could only float in the air and watch the commotion. Then, they all expressed their calmness. After all, no matter what Yun Nuoxing did, they would not be surprised anymore. They were already numb to it. Ding! The earth-shattering commotion did not last for long. Following a crisp sound, the world suddenly returned to normal. Everything quieted down, so quiet that it was as if nothing had happened. The sky was still the same, and there were no distortions. The sea was also so calm that there were no waves. Looking at the sky again, the transparent cracks in the black formation had completely disappeared. At this moment, it was slowly rotating in the sky. There was a powerful energy rumbling from the formation, and it made everyone's heart palpitate when they sensed it. That's it. She had a strange expression. She just started, and then everything was done by herself. Yes, it's very simple, isn't it? Yin Nuoxing nodded with a smile. She was speechless. It was so simple that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 9:30. The rumbling pillar of creation returned to silence within 5 minutes. Those divine patterns also disappeared along with the quietness of the heavens and earth, hidden within the pillar of creation. The onlookers all gathered around. At this time, Yin Nuoxing was finishing up. He controlled the pillar of creation to gradually calm down and extracted all the laws of the ancient era that had just been absorbed. Transparent energy threads flowed out from the pillar of creation and condensed in his hand. Soon, it condensed into a transparent bead the size of a thumb. In the center of the bead, there were many energy threads that were constantly changing shape, forming exquisite patterns and patterns. It's done. Palace Master Jean looked at the pillar of creation that had calmed down, and then looked at the bead in his hand. What is this? The laws and order of the ancient era of heaven and earth. It is because of this that the Guardian formation could not be repaired. They blocked the energy patterns in the formation. However, it is not good to leave this thing in the pillar of creation, so we can only extract it. Yin Nuoxing said softly as he tossed the bead in his hand. In other words, this bead contains all the laws of the ancient era of heaven and earth? Chu Yingxian blinked at Mei Mao and looked up to ask. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and stared at the bead in his hand. This is only about 1/10 of it. The 5 Guardian formations contain half of the laws and order of the ancient era of heaven and earth. This bead only contains 1/10 of it. What's the use of it? It's useless. Unexpectedly, Yin Nuoxing gave an answer that shocked everyone. The laws of the ancient era of heaven and earth in here are not even fragments of laws. It is like smashing a huge mirror and stuffing all the unconnected fragments together. It's just scraps. You can use it to reminisce about the ancient era. However, that way, you could go directly to the small divine lands. These are just useless scraps. Yin Nuoxing tossed the bead in his hand up and down for a while before saying, well, let's study it. Who knows, we might be able to find some special use if we combine the 5 beads together. As for restoring the complete power of laws from the far ancient era, that should be impossible, and there's no need for that. The small divine land contains the complete heaven and earth laws from the far ancient era. As he spoke, Yin Nuoxing put the bead into his body. He shrugged at everyone and said, "The Divine Land's great formation is completed." Among the other 4 guardian formations that are linked with it, the first one that reacted pointed in the direction of the Kuan-Yuan region. The other 3 regions have not reacted, so we have to follow the order for now. Yinuashing, Jean said, Yinuashing with his hand with it. There. Well, there are still some people who can threaten me. With it, there are with it. E, there are, there. L, is the with the with it. And yes. And, what about me? Jean Palace Master wanted to say something, but he was slapped away by Ning Qinxue. Ning Qinxue was less than 2 inches away from Yinuashing. They can't follow you. Is it okay for Shui to follow you? With me here, no one in the realm of the gods can touch you. Everyone was speechless. This was a big problem. It was scary to think about traveling with a god. Don't you need to take care of your Shuxian sect? Jean Palace Master's face twitched. He couldn't help but ask. The children can take care of it. I haven't shown up for an era. Isn't it still fine? Ning Qinxue curled her lips and said indifferently. Everyone smiled bitterly. The younger generation couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. This group of big shots at the pinnacle of power only thought about how to be a hands-off manager every day. Each one of them was better than the other. They had been doing this for more than an era. Yinuashing also smiled bitterly. Sister Shui, I'm just going to do some boring things. There's no need to make a big fuss. Just leave it to us. Well, if Sister Shui wants to help me, I do have something that requires a lot of effort. If we do it alone, it may take a long time. Now, we only have 1 year. We have to finish it before the end of this year. Ning Qinxue didn't have any other expression when her thoughts were guessed. She wanted to help Yinuashing anyway. So she agreed. Tell me, if you want the stars, I'll pluck them for you. As for Jean Palace Master and the others, they paid attention to the last sentence. 1 year? What's wrong with 1 year? Yinuashing was also stunned. She looked at Yaohua. You didn't say it? Yaohua spread out her hands. I was too excited. I forgot. Looking at the group of juniors who were speaking in tongues, Jean Palace Master and the others were confused. However, Chu Yingxian jumped out first and said, the fool used something to see the future in the Tianshan Taoist sanctum. It said that 1 year later, which is 1 year from today, the demon world will be born. Jean Palace Master and the others were stunned. They didn't seem too shocked. They were just a little surprised. They even looked at Yinuashing. After getting his answer, they nodded slightly. The birth of the demon world was also expected. They had all kinds of guesses. Now that they had confirmed that 1 year was the deadline, they had to hurry up. As for what they suspected, they had never suspected Yinuashing. Especially now that they knew his former identity, they didn't suspect anything. Well, if that's the case, I won't play with you. We have a lot of things to do. Oh, although that's what I said, it's not a problem to take out a few dozen god emperors to help you. Tell me, what do you need our help with? Jean Palace Master said calmly. In the end, he even coughed lightly. Chu Yingxian's face couldn't stop trembling, casually taking out a few dozen god emperors. As expected of the strongest guardian force in the Pantheon realm, Yinuashing smiled and took out a book from the pendant. The book had a black cover, and the title was Pantheon Realm's Flora Encyclopedia. In fact, it was a magical book that could lead to countless worlds. It was called the Book of Myriad Realms. Its complexity was comparable to that of the Eternal Divine weapon level formation book he had. There's an old friend. Oh, Yinuashing had just started to say something when he saw Chu Yingxian looking at him with a very strange gaze. He was stunned. What's wrong? An old friend? Chu Yingxian smirked and elbowed him in the waist. What is it? Where's your old friend? Everyone was also a little curious. They looked at Yinuashing with gossipy eyes. The latter's cheeks twitched violently. Under the gaze of a few dozen pairs of eyes, he couldn't help but turn his face away. He smiled bitterly and said, Okay. A confidant, okay? Ning Qinxue heard him and raised her eyebrows. She sighed faintly and said, There's another threat. Yinuashing did not know whether to laugh or cry. After a while, he coughed dryly and said seriously, She asked me to help her collect some mystical items that sound scary and look scary. Some of them are things that I have never even heard of before and can only be found in other worlds. Through this book of myriad realms, well, half of them are natives of the divine realm, but I still haven't found some of them. If it's just a few of us working together to find them, I estimated that it would take 3 years, but now it seems that time might not be enough. Of course, I didn't say that it has to be done before the demonic realm descends. It's just a calculation, and I'm treating the demonic realm's descent as a time limit. You also know that you're a troublesome whirlpool. Everyone was speechless. Yin Nuoshing laughed dryly and scratched his head. He said, "The worlds that we need to go to, as well as the various names, have already been marked. There might be 500 or 600 worlds that we need to go to. If Sister Jean and Sister Shui are willing to help." While he was hesitating, Princess Jean snatched the Book of Myriad Realms and hid it. Then she waved her hand and said, "All right, leave this matter to us." Hey, you stole my line. It's easier to leave this matter to me. Ning Qinxue glared at Princess Jean. Yin Nuoshing laughed bitterly and nodded. There were many things that he should have been busy with. However, if he were to complete all of them by himself, it would indeed be very time-consuming and laborious. This was probably one of the rare times that he would take the initiative to ask for help. "Who is the old friend that you mentioned?" Hall Master Hua asked casually. "An old friend from the Taishang age. He should also be a god, right?" "Yes." Yin Nuoshing nodded and looked at the Empress. After pondering for a while, he smiled and said, "Liuli." The Empress was stunned. She pointed at herself in astonishment and said, "Ah, no, not Sister Liuli. Sister Liuli's Liuli is just a code name." Yin Nuoshing smiled faintly and shook his head. "Her name is Liuli. She's the deity Liuli from the Taishang age." Everyone was shocked. The founder of the Liuli divine court. Her symbol is the lotus tree. Well, she doesn't take care of things, so there aren't many people in the Liuli divine court now. Moreover, this symbol was made by me. Ahem, quarter moon. Yin Nuoshing coughed dryly and said, "Sister Liuli, she's our master. Moreover, she's also the founder of the Pavilion of Fate. She's been in the Pavilion of Fate all this time. Waiting. The Empress was stunned for a moment, then shook her head with a bitter smile. This was big news. In the Liuli divine court, only the High Priestess had said that their master might still be alive. However, they all felt that it wasn't very realistic. After all, it had been several eras. She didn't think that anyone could survive such a long time and still be alive. However, since it was Yin Nuoshing and Quarter Moon who said it herself, it seemed that they had no choice but to believe it. The Pavilion of Fate and the Liuli Divine Court. All right, the leaders of these two mysterious factions in the God Realm have been mentioned all of a sudden. Heavenly God Liuli, huh? She's actually still alive. The power of a heavenly god is truly mysterious and unpredictable. Palace Master Jean scratched his head. They had heard of the heavenly god Liuli's name many times. Even in the current God Realm, there were still rumors about this supreme heavenly god. The heavenly god's dojo in Lihuan City was also left behind by this heavenly god. The legends left behind by such a person were enough to make anyone daydream for a lifetime. As if thinking the same thing as Palace Master Jean, Yin Nuoshing was also stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed. Speaking of which, the first time I was noticed by Liuli in this life was at the Pavilion of Fate. Later, she noticed me in the Heavenly God's dojo below Lihuan City. At that time, I felt that I was noticed by something. I didn't expect it. Where is that heavenly god now? Empress Jean asked. 10,000 Dragon Mountain, Dragon Head Peak, Yin Nuoshing said mysteriously. Everyone looked at each other for a moment, then shook their heads. Clearly, they had never heard of this place. Yin Nuoshing also knew about it. She coughed lightly and said, to be more specific, in the Sourcepeak region at the center of the Ghost Forest and Death Mountain Range, there is a barrier. Once you cross it, you will reach the Myriad Dragon Mountain. Liuli is also there. Everyone was stunned. To think that she would be in such a place at this time, Jin Jinwang also suddenly remembered something. He slapped his forehead and said in shock, "A few years ago in the Ghost Forest, the third divine sword, the Abyss Dark Sword, appeared. The Abyss Dark Sword is in Liuli's hands." Yin Nuoxing laughed. That time, she didn't use her full strength. She only revealed a little bit of the divine weapon's aura. Originally, that aura wouldn't have affected me, but I jumped out to block it for you and was accidentally injured. Now that I think about it, she hurriedly weakened the power at that time. Otherwise, I would have been turned into ashes in an instant. As expected, Jin Wang suddenly understood. Now that he thought about it, he still felt that it was a little strange. No matter how heaven-defying Yin Nuoxing was at that time, he was only at the immortal stage. Even with a lot of divine weapons, it was impossible for him to block the power of a great success divine weapon. At that time, he should have died on the spot. Even if he had divine weapons, it was impossible for him to block it. In that kind of situation, even a God Emperor level powerhouse wouldn't be able to survive. The Abyss Dark Sword is forged from the energy of darkness. The power of a casual strike of the sword is enough to shatter any defenses that don't belong to the power of laws. Its domain can even turn an area of 1,000,000 kilometers into a lawless, chaotic zone. Apart from the wielder of the sword, no one else can use the power of laws, Yin Nuoxing said. It's a super large-scale, enhanced version of the Dark Shadow Realm. At this point, many things made sense. Little star, you don't want to go and see her? After you recover your memories? Xian blinked at Mei Mao. Her large, watery eyes flashed with beautiful colors, as if she was conveying some kind of emotion to her master. I will go. Yin Nuoxing closed his eyes and smiled. I'll go look for her. It won't take long. At the very least, I'll have to wait until all the materials are collected before I can go look for her. Otherwise, she'll get angry and kick me down the mountain. Everyone, you seem to have said something wrong just now. Uh-huh. Yin Nuoxing laughed awkwardly. She rubbed a strand of her long hair and said, Once upon a time, don't be fooled by her obedient appearance. Whenever Quarter Moon did something that made her angry or depressed, Azure would angrily scold him. Of course, it was useless. You see, I'm still like this even now. So later on, whenever I did something wrong, I would get kicked off the mountain, into the sea, or into the sun. Everyone was speechless. Wasn't that because you were too suicidal? That's because Big Brother is degrading himself too much. He's always making people angry. Ming crossed her arms and snorted softly. Everyone cursed in their hearts. Look, even your sister said that about you. All right, I'm changing now. I've also seriously reflected on it. Yin Nuoxing helplessly reached out and rubbed the girl's silver-white hair. He did a lot of things that were not very likable, but he believed that this was the safest way. Compared to other people, it was the safest way. After the God's proclamation dispels the suppression of the order of this era by the remnant rules of the ancient era, Luli should also know that I obtained those memories. Before I meet her again, I have to be prepared. First, I have to complete the task she gave me. Well, to be honest, I don't know what she wants these materials for. Forging, probably. After all, many of them are 12th grade materials that are exclusive to gods. Some of them I've never even heard of. They might be fairy items. The Golden Princess casually flipped through the Myriad Realm book. She did not recognize many of the recorded materials, but she recognized many of the materials that were native to the realm of the gods. They were so famous that it was frightening. There are no herbs mixed in, so it shouldn't be for refining medicine or alchemy. It can only be for forging or forging. Gently closing the Myriad Realm book, the Golden Princess raised her eyebrows. Otherwise, I can't think of any use for them. After all, they are gods. We're mere mortals. How can we speculate? Anyway, leave it to us. Little star, don't worry and go do what you need to do. Ning Chinchua pinched Yin Nuoxing's face and smiled. Yin Nuoxing mumbled twice. He could not speak human language and could only nod silently. So, do you plan to set off now? Suddenly, Jin Wang asked a question that sounded a little strange. Everyone was stunned. This question seemed to be implying something. Yin Nuoxing was also startled for a moment. After thinking for a while, he shook his head. There's no rush. The matter isn't so urgent that it's urgent. I can rest for a day or two. Well, I force myself to advance. I still have to check if there are any consequences. Hearing this, Jin Wang heaved a sigh of relief. His golden eyes stared straight at him. You're finally willing to rest for a while? Ever since you came to the Nine Deities Temple, you haven't stayed awake for more than a day. Yin washing, aha, ha, this. I didn't want to. A year was not a long time. If it went by slowly, it would not seem very fast. They were not in a hurry for a day or two. During this period of time, they rested in the Nine Deities Temple. This made the Golden Princess and the others breathe a sigh of relief. This kid was finally willing to stay here obediently. In the past, the more they called him, the more he would leave. During this period, there was a piece of news that surprised everyone. Over the years, it was almost inevitable for the younger generation to go to the small divine lands. Most of them went there when they were at the demigod level. The complete rules of the primordial age were preserved there, which was beneficial for cultivation. The area of the small divine lands was larger than the area of today's large territory. However, the communication between the inside and the outside was not very close. Sometimes, when something big happened outside, the small divine lands might not know about it, even after 1,000 years. Long before the trip to the secret land, the Xin family, the Qin family, and the Yu family, who had close ties with the Nine Deities Temple, had already known that the Nine Deities Temple had a new young master. Previously, the three families had only guessed the secret of Yun Nuoxing's identity. When it was revealed, many people were stunned. However, the 8 ancient families had been passed down from the primordial age. Although they were supernatural forces that were born in the later period of the primordial age, they still had some information about that age. They also knew some things about the Nine Deities Temple, including the 10th Temple Master. Therefore, no one found it strange. It was not a big deal to talk about these two things separately. However, when they were linked together, Qin Hai, the head of the Qin family, intended to settle the engagement before Qin Yin went to the small divine lands. It could be said that he had completely entrusted the Nine Deities Temple to Yin Nuoxing. At this moment, it finally dawned on everyone. So there was a marriage contract. Those who were having fun outside had almost forgotten about this matter. However, Yao Hua and Yuan, she didn't forget about it. Not only did they not forget about it, but they were also looking forward to it more than anyone else. It was as if they were the ones getting married instead of Yin Nuoxing and Qin Yin. When the news came out, Yin Nuoxing and Qin Yin, who were the main characters, were stunned for a long time with expressionless faces. Then, one raised her cup and drank tea, while the other's eyes were blank. No one knew what she was thinking. Yin Nuoxing calmly raised his teacup. Calm down. Calm down. Everyone stared at him. Your hands are shaking. Clang. Look, the teacup was shaken off by you. Chapter 9:31. Putting aside the matter of the engagement, when he saw the wedding invitation that day and saw Yun Nuoxing and Qin Yan's names written on it, he had already broken down once. And this matter was his own fault from the beginning to the end. If he hadn't suddenly flirted with Qin Yin during the Taiyuan grand banquet that day, if he hadn't been coincidentally seen by her father, Qin Hai, and if he hadn't been too embarrassed to tell Qin Hai the truth. In fact, he wouldn't have been able to tell the truth. What happened that day was right in front of Qin Hai. God knew how far he could have imagined it. Even if Yun Nuoxing jumped into the East Sea, she would have dyed the East Sea black. It couldn't be washed clean, and it would only get worse. Regarding this, Qin Yin herself also expressed some distress. However, when facing her parents, she also couldn't say anything. Unfortunately, she had been with Yin Nuoxing for a period of time, so she didn't reject him and even felt close to him. Otherwise, how could such an embarrassing thing have happened by the lake that day? Therefore, when the two of them kept their mouths shut, Qin Hai also felt that Yun Nuo planet was not bad. Even for people in their position, it was very pleasing to the eye and felt that it was not bad. Then, he hit it off with his wife and sold their daughter just like that. In short, the cause was a misunderstanding that didn't seem like a misunderstanding. It was a huge blunder. Up until now, they were already engaged. At that time, the Qin family didn't know Yun Nuoxing's background, so it was a one-sided engagement. Later, when they found out that Yun Nuashing was the young hall master of the Nine Deities Temple, they became even more enthusiastic. The two families were already on good terms, and now that the successors of the two families were married, it could be said that the two families were even closer. Anyway, that was what it meant. In short, this matter was passed around between acquaintances. Suddenly, one day, the matter of that day was leaked out. Yuan Shi, Yao Hua, and the others' eyes lit up. They condemned Yin Nuashing righteously, pinned her down in the hall of the deity's temple, and gave her a painful lesson. They angrily reprimanded her for playing with other girls' hearts and being irresponsible. Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded when she heard this. The others who were sitting at the side all nodded and agreed. As for Qin Yin, she was sitting on the other side. Xian held her hands and told her a girl's secret. At the same time, she calmly looked at her future husband, kneeling on the sofa and rolling his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. No matter how Yin Nuashing thought about it, he felt that something was amiss. Other than him and Qin Yin, only Little Moon knew about what happened that day. Qin Yin would never expose such a shameful matter. So, the only thing left was thinking of this. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but take a deep breath. He turned his head and looked at Little Moon. When she saw him looking at her, she immediately shrank her little head and quickly shrank behind the sofa like an ostrich. Seeing her like this, Yin Nuashing took another deep breath. He found Little Moon's soul seed in his soul and sent her a message. "Stupid girl, I'll teach you a lesson later." Little Moon was so scared that she trembled. She quickly raised her head and looked at Yin Nuashing with an aggrieved expression. Her beautiful little face became delicate and pitiful. "Brother, I accidentally told you. It's all that idiot's fault. She kept pestering me to listen to brother's matters. Who knew that she would spill the beans?" Yin Nuashing smiled warmly. Seeing his gentle smile, Little Moon's little heart trembled. She also smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that brother wouldn't teach her a lesson. "Just you wait. Neither of you girls can escape." Then his next sentence sent Little Moon from heaven to hell. Her jade-like legs went weak, and she sat directly on the sofa. Mei Mao looked at him with sparkling and translucent eyes. She opened her mouth wide as if she wanted to beg for mercy. Yin Nuashing angrily turned his face away, making Little Moon's pretty face turn even paler. He, I'm talking to you. Don't pretend that you didn't hear me, okay? You're a prisoner now. You'd better listen to me obediently." Yuan Shi slammed the table and loudly reminded Yin Nuashing. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. He shook his head helplessly and raised his hands. "All right, I surrender. I'm guilty. I deserve to die. I shouldn't have flirted with girls. But who knew that something like this would happen that day? Your excuses are invalid. I don't accept excuses. What's done is done. Can you bravely bear the consequences like a man?" Chu Yingxian sat on the sofa with her jade-like legs crossed and her arms crossed in front of her chest. She looked very aggressive. Yin Nuashing was completely at a loss for what to do. He could only bury his head and lament his bad luck. After bickering for a while, Qin Yin finally said something to end the farce. "Young Master Yin didn't do it on purpose that day. I'm at fault too. If I had broken free quickly, Father wouldn't have seen us. Things wouldn't have turned out like this now." Hearing the main character say this, everyone had nothing else to say. They waved their hands, and the farce ended just like that. Yin Nuashing, who had been kneeling on the sofa for an hour, leisurely climbed down from the sofa. Then, like a fierce tiger pouncing on its prey, he directly jumped in front of Little Moon, whose face was ghastly pale. "Wah! Sister Yin, save me. Brother's going to hit me. Woo woo woo." The hall was instantly in chaos again. Princess Jean and the rest looked at the scene in the hall and couldn't help but sigh. Young people, time passed leisurely for another 2 days. The group of people who had returned from the mystic realm finally washed away the fatigue from running around. They regained their usual lively and infatuated spirit. Every day, they looked at the morning sun, cultivated, and learned from each other. Their realms had also completely stabilized. Following that, there was an unshakable worry. People who had ascended to the beginner god level couldn't get rid of the seal. This had nothing to do with one's talent. It was something that was inevitable. To be more specific, the birth of a seal had nothing to do with one's talent. Regardless of whether one's talent was good or bad, once one's ability rose to a certain level, it would trigger the seal. It was equivalent to the suppression of the rules of heaven and earth. Within a certain period of time, one's cultivation would be unable to progress any further until the seal's time was over. However, the duration of the seal was related to one's talent and ability. Oh, Yaohua, initial seal duration, 1.5 years. Jining, initial seal duration, 1.5 years. Muling, initial seal duration, 1.5 years. Yuanxi, initial seal duration, 2 years. The following are 2 years. Nightmare, Shui Xia, Chu Yingzhan, Qin Yen, Hua Sheng. Xian, initial seal duration, 3.5 years. Ming, godly emperor seal duration, 1,700 years. Bing Er, godly king seal duration, 350 years. At the beginning, it didn't seem like much. However, when the seals were 1,000 years and 100 years, the group of juniors couldn't help but vomit blood. 300 years? Yaohua trembled as he stretched out 3 fingers. He trembled as he looked at Bing Er. Then, he looked at the angel who was pretending to be asleep on Yun Nuoxing's head. 1,000 years. I think I'll suffocate to death. Lei Ming's face twitched. The seal duration is related to one's talent and strength. From this, we can see the actual situation of each person. The Golden Crown Princess clapped her jade-like hands. It's easy to detect the duration of the seal. However, since Ming Ming jumped 2 realms in the Tianxin Taoist sanctum, I don't think this duration means much to some people. After that, she looked directly at Yun Nuoxing, who was surrounded by a group of girls. Yun Nuoxing was also stunned. She smiled bitterly and nodded. The so-called seal is just that. The jealousy of the heavens is actually a form of suppression by the rules of heaven and earth. The heavenly tribulation is also a form of suppression. If you really want to say, the seal is the most special form of the heavenly tribulation. It will not cause a destructive blow to you. It will only make you stagnate for a few thousand years. Since it involves the power of the origin, although it is invisible, it has a form. As long as there is a form of manifestation, there will be a corresponding way. In other words, the seal can be eliminated. In the ancient times, there were many people and gods who studied the seal all their lives. The most common way to deal with it was cultivation. The seal will suppress 99% of the cultivation results, which means that the difficulty of cultivation will increase by 100 times. Some harsher ones might increase it by 1,000 times or even 10,000 times. At that time, the result of 10,000 days of cultivation is equivalent to the result of 1 day of cultivation without the seal. If you calculate it this way, it's quite scary, right? Everyone smiled bitterly and nodded vigorously. If the speed of cultivation was slowed down by 10,000 times, it would be even slower than a turtle crawling. Yun Nuoxing smiled. Later, someone created a unique secret method that could slowly reduce the duration of the seal while continuing to cultivate. For example, one could reduce the duration of the seal by 1 minute per day. Of course, this is just a metaphor. In fact, I have not cultivated it, so I don't know. However, the efficiency of these methods is too low. I have the best way to directly eliminate the effects of the seal. What way? Yaohua and the others suddenly widened their eyes. Even Empress Jean could not help but look askance. If there was such a way to eliminate the seal, all the strong gods in the world would rush over to snatch it. The duration of the seal was too long, especially for high-level gods. One seal could even last for hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years. If there was a way to eliminate the seal, it was equivalent to saving countless years of time. Yun Nuoxing smiled mysteriously until everyone could not hold it in any longer. Then he slowly said, "It's a celestial item." It's those magical spiritual things of heaven and earth that are not on the list of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, but are not inferior to the top 5 or top 3. It's as if they were born in the distant world of immortals. How many of them can you find in the mortal world? Yin Nuashing said. After thinking for a while, she said, it's the pile of medicinal herbs in the mausoleum world that Ming took and distributed. You don't recognize them. This time, everyone said, but those are just ordinary fairy things. How many of them can you find in the mortal world? I'm sorry, I have a lot of them. So, when Ming and the others cultivated until the seal was released, I helped them to remove it, one at a time. Everyone was speechless. Everyone stared. Flaunting wealth? This was blatant flaunting wealth. How could she provoke them like this? If there's such a thing, Yao Hua smacked his lips. Won't it be possible to pile up divine emperors or even gods in one go? You're thinking too much. Empress Jean glared at him and said, it's true that fairy things can directly eliminate the seal, but you need time to cultivate yourself, right? Later on, divine underworld and divine sky gods also need a lot of time to cultivate every small realm. However, this method can indeed save a lot of time. It's just that fairy things are difficult for ordinary people to come into contact with. The 9 temples each have 2 types of fairy things. Generations of fairy things were harvested and preserved after they matured, so there's a certain amount of them in stock. Hearing this, Yao Hua and the others' eyes instantly lit up. So the temples also had such shocking things? They didn't know all this time. Suddenly being stared at by the children with eager eyes, Empress Jin's pretty face trembled. She rolled her eyes and said, don't worry, there's a share for all of you. Other than being able to remove the seal, the fairy things also have a special effect. Don't stare at it. When you receive the inheritance, it will naturally be given to you. Speaking of which, you were supposed to receive the inheritance at the demigod level, but the timing wasn't right, and I let you run away. I didn't expect that when you came back, you were already at the beginner god level. But it doesn't matter. It's not a problem to receive the inheritance now. As she said this, she waved her feather coat and dragged the group of people who were standing, lying, and lying down. With a dry howl, she dragged the group of people out of the hall, leaving Yin Nuashing and the others looking at each other. In the end, they all shrugged their shoulders to express their calmness. Unknowingly, another 2 days had passed. The 9 floating islands of the 9 temples were very large. The 9 cities built around the 9 temples were about the size of 5-star underworld cities. Moreover, there were many people who were closely related to the 9 temples. It could be said that they formed a world of their own. Even if they didn't communicate with the outside world, there was no problem. Yin Nuashing and the others stayed in this place for 5 or 6 days and had leisure every day. The previous day, Tian Yaohua and the other future divine kings, divine sons, and divine daughters of the 9 temples were all thrown away to receive the inheritance of their respective temples, leaving Yin Nuashing and the others behind. However, they were not bored and had nothing to do. Yuan Shi and Nightmare looked for the disciples of the 9 temples every day to spar with them. However, with their current strength, they could only find some old disciples who were hundreds or thousands of years old. Those were all at the beginner god level. Those of the same age were probably still at the demigod level. Yin Nuashing finally achieved her life goal in a short period of time. Every day, she would look at the morning sun, cultivate for a while, drink tea, and read for a while. After that, she would be lovey-dovey with the girls beside her. Yu and Chu Yingzhan ran around the 9 temples every day, and Little Moon would occasionally go crazy with them. Xian and Ming would follow her closely 24 hours a day. After all, the 2 of them really had nothing to do. Bing Air would occasionally show her laziness as a dragon. She would transform into a 1-foot-long dragon and lie on Yin Nuashing's head. Just like Xiao Xian, she was about to be bound to Yin Nuashing's body. Another thing was that Lan Exen had also achieved her wish of cultivating a new body. When she suddenly jumped out and spun around while holding her skirt, Yin Nuashing and the others were shocked. How did this girl manage to cultivate a new body without saying anything? After what Palace Master Tianjin said, and Yishi frequently ran in and out of your soul, Exen started cultivating a new body. It's just that a certain someone was too busy to know about it, Ziyi said calmly as she took a sip of tea. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. It was only because he saw Yishi moving in and out of his soul that he was not affected, that he made up his mind to cultivate his physical body. From then on, he completely got rid of the form of a lonely soul and could continue to move around in his soul. What do you think my spiritual world is? Yin Nuoxing covered her face speechlessly. A place to sleep, the girls replied. Yin Nuoxing cried as she rushed out of the main hall. After rushing out of the main hall, Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. She rubbed her beautiful face with both hands and shook her head helplessly. Those girls were too indecent. When she turned around and saw that no one was following her, she was a little surprised. She thought that those girls were already bound to her and were inseparable from her. At this moment, her soul also had a rare moment of peace. Kaixia had also been pulled out by Ziyi. Little Purple Soul had also recently pestered Ming and no longer clung to him all day long. As a result, there was only a pink egg left in her soul. Feng'er, this girl, she slept for so long. Why hasn't she woken up yet? Yin Nuoxing used her soul power to poke the pink egg and sighed helplessly. As soon as she sighed, she suddenly raised her head and suddenly thought of something. She slapped her head and hurriedly ran in the direction of the fire god shrine. He had indeed forgotten one thing. It was neither a big nor small matter to him, but to some people, it was a big matter that could change their lives. The last time he returned to the Nine-God Shrine, he brought back a group of people from the small world formed by the elemental stones. Now, he had long forgotten about them. I wonder how they are doing. After muttering to himself for a while, Yin Nuoxing sped up and soon arrived at the fire god shrine at the center of the floating island. He released his soul force and sensed for a while. He didn't enter the shrine, but flew in a certain direction. Although he hadn't seen that person for more than a year, he still remembered that person's aura. That person wasn't in the shrine and left a faint trace in the air. It seemed like that person had gone out. Following the direction of the aura, Yin Nuoxing left the city and came to a large area of forest near the edge of the floating island. She found her target on a tall mountain and sniffed lightly before landing there. On the mountain peak, there was a huge rock protruding from the mountain, forming a slender platform. The Nine-God Shrine was originally high up in the sky, and this mountain peak pierced the clouds. Below the platform, clouds flowed, making it look like a fairyland. On the steep mountain peak, a graceful figure was faintly discernible in the clouds. Her snow-white robe was covered with a red robe, covering her beautiful body. However, some of her curves were still exposed. She had long snow-white hair, and a few strands of hair by her ears were gently tied up by a long black ribbon. Then, they fell down and curled up on the ground. A gentle breeze blew, and her long hair fluttered. On her calm and beautiful face, a pair of beautiful eyes were tightly closed. Her snow-white or even pale skin did not destroy her beauty. Instead, it gave her a sense of maturity. The young girl Mei Mao closed her eyes tightly. After a moment, she suddenly felt an aura that had disappeared for a long time. She was stunned for a moment and turned her head. Yin Nuoxing landed 3 to 4 meters behind her. The surrounding clouds also quietly dispersed a little. Yin, seeing his sudden appearance, the young girl hurriedly stood up. Just as she was about to salute him, Yin Nuoxing waved his hand to stop her. Don't be like that. Be natural. Just treat me as an unimportant passerby. I'm just here to see you. After all, I brought you out from that place. The young girl nodded and looked at him without opening her eyes. This made Yin Nuoxing a little curious. Speaking of which, you haven't opened your eyes all this time. How did you see me? Chu Fan. The two of them casually sat down at the edge of the platform. Chu Fan slowly recounted the events of the past year. 3 months after you left, Xian, and the others left. They went to the realm of the gods to train. Uncle Een and the other two also went to the realm of the gods to play. Although they left their soul tablets, and I know that they are fine, I don't know where they went. Half a year ago, I went back to the clan and have been staying here to cultivate. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Chu Xian and the others' actions were within his expectations. Compared to quietly cultivating in one place, they seemed to prefer to go out and explore. This made him suddenly think of Lin Sheng. They seemed to be the same kind of people. As for Chu Fan's choice to stay here, he had nothing to say. Everyone had their own ambitions. Chu Fan's personality was a little dull, and his health was not good. The Torch Dragon's ability to see through everything in the world came with a price. In exchange for this kind of heaven-defying talent, her life essence was very dim. Even her lifespan was affected. Well, your body isn't well, so it's fine to stay here. This is a very good place to cultivate your body and mind. If you want, you can stay here forever. Yin Nuoxing shook his legs and said casually. That's what the senior said as well. Chu Fan smiled. Yin Nuoxing curled his lips and thought for a moment. Then, he gently stroked his palm over his ring. After a while, he took out a gray-white branch. The gray-white branch did not have anything special about it. There were no energy fluctuations. Saying that it was gray-white was more like saying that its color had disappeared. It had turned into a dull gray-white. There was nothing special about it. Gently stroking this gray-white branch, Yin Nuoxing's hand seal condensed. His 5 fingers lightly tapped, and 5 drops of golden blood dripped down from his fingertips. They dripped into the branch, and quickly dyed it with a layer of brilliant gold, as if the color of the blood was stuck on it. As the color changed, a terrifyingly pure aura of life swept out, creating a small emerald-green whirlwind in the area. With just a sniff of that rich aura of life, even one's fatigue would be cleansed. Blood evergreen. Well, the name is a bit strange. However, this is an authentic fairy item. This item can only be activated with blood essence. It can make up for the congenital deficiency in your life form. As Yin Nuoxing spoke, he extended the branch that had turned completely golden. It looked as if it was cast from gold towards Chu Fan. Chu Fan stared blankly and was about to wave his hand when Yin Nuoxing spoke first. Your flame of life is like a candle in the wind. It can be extinguished at any time. You should know your own situation better than anyone else. A smart person should make a smart choice at this time. I'm not giving you charity. I'm just lending it to you for now. I'll ask you for it back in the future. Moreover, this item is not very important to me. In the end, he added in his heart, if it wasn't for the fact that the life force of the Glories Will tree was a bit stronger. I used 5 drops of blood. Chu Fan was silent for a long time. After a long time, he opened his golden eyes and looked at Yin Nuoxing. He stretched out his jade hand. After hesitating for a moment, Yin Nuoxing directly took the opportunity and stuffed it into his hand. He said, just take it. Feeling the rich life force coming from the mysterious item in his hand, Chu Fan sighed and nodded. He said, then, this little girl will accept this favor first. Chapter 9:32. Yin Nuoxing was only here to check on Chu Fan's situation and chat about their past year and their future. He wasn't worried about this, and it wasn't his place to care. He was just curious. After chatting for a while, Yin Nuoxing planned to leave. He could see that Chu Fan was in a good state and was cultivating, so he didn't want to disturb him. Yin, be careful. I can see that someone has their eyes on you. Before leaving, Chu Fan's beautiful face was full of seriousness. Facing Yin Nuoxing, that golden Maimao opened her eyes a little and said something that made him a little stunned. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while. It was not that he did not take it to heart, but this kind of warning was very consistent with his current situation. He was Yin Nuoxing, a spiritual divine body. In the early years, he had inexplicably offended some people and was inexplicably remembered by others. There were many people who were watching him. He was very clear about this point. But even if he knew, he still wanted to sigh. It was true that life did not go according to one's wishes. When one was unlucky, in addition to drinking water and stuffing one's teeth, there was also the possibility of a flying pot from the sky being placed on one's head like a basin of shit. In this pot, he seemed to have carried it for a long time. Yin Nuoxing didn't particularly care about Chu Fan's words, but it wasn't that he turned a deaf ear to it either. It was purely because he knew that this was the case, and if he was reminded again, it would be the same thing. Therefore, he didn't seem to care very much. He only smiled at Chu Fun and nodded. Chu Fun originally thought that it would pass like this, but when he saw that Yun Nuoxing didn't seem to care, he hurriedly grabbed the arm of Yun Nuoxing, who was about to stand up, and hurriedly said, "It's different this time. After coming to the realm of the gods, I also learned a lot about you, but what I saw this time, after opening his mouth for a while, Chu Fun seemed to have choked and couldn't say anything for a long time. Then he tightly closed his red lips. Seeing Yun Nuoxing looking at him in astonishment, a trace of anxiety flashed across his fair face. After a while, he said, "I can't say. If I say it, it will have a great impact, and it will have the greatest impact on you." Hearing this, even Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. In Quarter Moon's long memories, he had seen all kinds of deduction and evolution methods, but he had never seen anything like Chu Fun, which made him feel very surprised. "You can actually see things related to me. You should know that there are a lot of unstable explosives on my body. If you casually use any method to see or deduce, you will easily suffer a backlash," Yun Nuoxing faintly reminded him. Hearing this, Chu Fun lowered his head, and a trace of gold flashed across his eyes. After a while, he lightly shook his head and said in a certain tone, "Man, I can feel that Yun's body has a powerful shielding ability, but what I can see isn't focused on a single object. Instead, what I can see is a short period of time in the future with an object as the center. I don't look at the object itself, so I won't be affected. If I directly observe Yun's body, I will also suffer a backlash. If Yun has any malice or hostility towards me, then I won't even be able to see the first scene." "There's such a thing?" Yun Nuoxing was also taken aback. She never thought that there would be a way to bypass the shielding of many factors on her body. However, when she heard the last sentence, she felt relieved. It was just that there were still limitations. In the past, Xin Yu also had a lot of attainments in deduction and other aspects. Now that all of it had been passed down to him, he naturally also had it. As for how to deduce and spy on an object that was blocked by a powerful force, he also had his own methods. However, like what Chu Fun said, he really didn't understand and didn't know. Perhaps it was because she was a torch dragon that her innate talent gave her this kind of power, although the price she had to pay for it made Yun Nuoxing sigh a little. Seeing Chu Fun's troubled expression, Yun Nuoxing also knew that existences like her who were similar to divination masters had many secrets that could only rot in their stomachs, because what they knew was contrary to the laws of the world. They could not speak of it. If they wanted to speak of it, they could only vaguely remind them like this. Once they blurted it out, they would either be suppressed by the power of the laws of the world, or what they knew would be distorted. In the latter case, the degree of distortion would not necessarily be very small. For example, Yun Nuoxing originally planned to drink a mouthful of water when she woke up in the morning, but she was suddenly told by Chu Fun that she couldn't drink the water. Therefore, she didn't drink it. Many years later, it caused the destruction of a large area. The so-called butterfly effect was all because she didn't drink that mouthful of water that morning. Of course, although the impact of this kind of thing was huge, it would take a long time to accumulate such a powerful effect. The incident itself was only a small matter. If Chu Fun told her and Yun Nuoxing drank it, nothing special would have happened. This was also the result of the laws of heaven and earth constantly adjusting and repairing themselves. As long as it didn't have a major impact, and as long as it wasn't something that was significant enough to distort the laws of heaven and earth, it could be slowly fixed. However, if it couldn't be fixed, the situation mentioned above would happen. All right, I roughly know what you want to say. I also know a lot about the rules of professions like seer, so you don't have to say it. Yun Nuoxing nodded, then habitually reached out her hand to rub Chu Fun's bright white hair. After a moment, she felt that something was wrong, so she quickly withdrew her hand, coughed dryly, and said, "Anyway, I will be careful. After all, there are more than one or two people who are thinking about me, and it's not just a day or two. Even if there's a big movement, I should be able to avoid it. If I can't avoid it, I won't be afraid. However, since you reminded me, I will be more careful." Chu Fun, who had never been treated like this by a man other than his father, suddenly had his head rubbed. His pale face turned slightly red for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure and didn't care about this matter. After hearing what she said, she could only nod. She could only give this kind of advice. As for what would happen in the end, and what kind of form it would take, let's leave it to fate. Let the impending disaster happen as fate wills. The death omen star above my head, twinkle and twinkle. After leaving such a light and heartless sentence, Yin Nuoxing left in a flash, leaving behind Chu Fun with a bitter smile. This guy was too optimistic. When other people found out about the death omen star above their heads, they would probably start preparing their wills. After bidding farewell to Chu Fun, Yin Nuoxing returned to the Golden Temple. When the group of maidservants saw him coming in, they also stood up to welcome him. After they pulled him back to his seat, they didn't say anything special. The few of them looked at each other, as if they were waiting for time to pass slowly. Pass your head. It seems like you're very free now. Then come over. I have something to do. The Golden Princess, who had sent Yao Hua and the others to receive their inheritance, returned. As soon as she came in, she saw Yun Nuoxing lying among the flowers, leisurely feeling the passage of time. Her beautiful face immediately darkened. Without saying anything, she picked up Yun Nuoxing, who was lying lazily on the sofa, and carried him out of the hall. Xian and the other maidservants looked at each other, then looked at Yun Nuoxing, who was constantly howling as he was pulled out of the hall. They silently waved their lily-white hands and said, "Have a safe journey." Yin Nuoxing burst into tears. In the following period of time, Yin Nuoxing was in pain and happiness as usual. In the past few years, because he didn't have the element of gold, wind, or thunder, he only had the 5 elements of light, fire, wood, water, and metal. Although he had learned all the unique skills of the 9 shrines, he didn't learn the essence of some of them, nor did he have the chance to learn them. Jin Jinwang also expressed some regret at that time. Now that he had all the 10 elements and all the conditions were met, how could the Divine King, the Great Elder, and the others let him go so easily? Therefore, Yin Nuoxing's hell came. Apart from the dark element, Yin Nuoxing was now being drilled by the 9 shrines temple masters, the Great Elder, and the others. They dug out all the essences of the 9 shrines and poured them into Yin Nuoxing's head. They called it guidance, but in fact they poured tons of knowledge into Yin Nuoxing's head, making him feel as if his head was about to explode. It had to be said that the 9 shrines, as the overlords of the remote antiquity age, had a one-track mind of studying only one element, which allowed them to comprehend each element to the point of great enlightenment. The subtleties and all kinds of knowledge were accumulated over a long period of time. Even though Yin Nuoxing had the memory of the God of Heaven, he still felt that he had benefited a lot from the super results that took dozens of years. After a while, he couldn't help but sigh. How good would it be if the Dark Shrine was still around? If the Dark Shrine was still around, they would have studied the Dark Element for 70 years. That element was already extremely terrifying. Who knew what would happen if they studied it for another 70 years? The 9 Hall Masters were stunned when they heard this. They looked at each other and whispered into each other's ears for a moment. Soon after, they coughed softly and said, "The Dark Divine Hall might still exist. However, it is impossible for them to have studied it for 70 years if it is as you think. It still exists. I remember that it was blown to pieces. When they appeared, which was the penultimate battle of Quarter Moon and the others, the Dark Shrine was directly destroyed. None of the 9 shrines were damaged." Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. Was there something wrong with his memory? "Well, we're not very clear about your memory, but the Dark Shrine might still exist." Shrine Master Jin looked at him and pondered for a while. Then he said, "Maybe it's in the small divine land." How do you know?" Palace Master Jin was silent for a while, organized his words, and said, "A few years ago, or many years ago, there was a legend in Little Divine Land. There was a strange and broken black temple floating in the void of Little Divine Land, emitting a terrifying power that could make the heavens and earth tremble. Some people guessed that it was a god relic or even a god palace. There were all kinds of guesses, But none of those guesses were worth as much as a personal experience. There was a peak great God Realm warrior who was lucky enough to come across that broken black temple. He was so excited that he didn't think about anything else, because this legend had already spread like wildfire in Little Divine Land. People who knew about God Relic or God Palace had blinded his judgment. Suddenly, there was a possible way to enter the God Relic in front of him, and he definitely wouldn't let it go. Then he went in, and after he came out, he went crazy and kept muttering about terror, distortion, and darkness. Others might not know what it is, but we speculate that the black shrine floating in the void might have been left behind by the 10th Shrine Master. No, it was once destroyed, but it wasn't completely destroyed. The Dark Shrine? Yin Nuashing was stunned when he heard this. His head was a little swollen. This actually didn't shatter? Under such a level of joint attack, it was actually able to hold on and not shatter. Logically speaking, the dilapidated black temple that no one took care of had already left the situation of the present world and entered the void world. There was no abnormal structure that had any aura. It should have dissipated in the void very quickly and been melted by the void. However, it was still standing here with part of its wreckage, and it had become a mysterious legend in the small divine land. Moreover, he had been floating in the void for who knows how many years. This situation made Yin Nuashing feel a headache coming on just thinking about it. But there was no need for Palace Master Jean to play tricks on him. Yin Nuashing thought seriously for a while, then nodded and said, "Anyway, I'll go to the small divine land and see if I'm lucky enough to run into that mysterious broken shrine. If it is, I think even if it is, there shouldn't be anything special left inside. After all, Quarter Moon was used to keeping everything in her pocket, and she could just leave when something happened. So, many things, including all the possessions of a divine realm expert, may be kept in the ice realm, on Quarter Moon's bones. As for that thing suspected to be the Dark Shrine, I guess it's just an empty shell." Yin Nuashing shrugged and said helplessly. This topic seemed to be getting further and further away, and the expressions of Palace Master Jean and the others began to become strange. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but laugh dryly and quickly waved his hand, and then continued his cultivation on how to use the elements more effectively. The 9 Palace Masters and the Great Elders were so bored that 18 of them gathered around one person to teach him. Unfortunately, this person was once a divine realm expert. Even if he was kicked down from the clouds, he was still an extremely powerful demigod. He had the life memories of a divine realm expert, and his experience and various other things, which the Palace Masters and the others couldn't compare to. "So, don't you want to go to the Ice Realm?" Princess Jean raised her eyebrows and said, "Now, the bodies of the ancestors are kept at the bottom of the Fire God Temple in the center. The immortal divine realm crystal perfectly preserved the bodies of the 9 ancestors, and they didn't suffer the ravages of time. In addition, we also made a space for them. Although it's a bit strange to say this, that space is reserved for you. Cough for the former you, which is the 10th space." Yin Nuashing's face suddenly twitched, and he shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and said, "Then there's no need for the 10th space. I have my own use for that body, and I'll keep it for myself." Although she didn't know what Yin Nuashing was talking about, and she was also curious, she didn't ask anything. When the time came, Yin Nuashing would tell her everything. Before he told her everything, she would let him keep this little secret. Anyway, he would be the one who couldn't hold it in and blurt it out when the time came. "You can withstand that kind of pressure?" Princess Jean glanced at him again. "We went together that day. That level of pressure could be felt from far away. We all felt it before. Before we even raised our eyes to look, we felt like we were going blind." Princess Jean still had a lingering fear in her heart when she thought about what happened that day. Although it was a little comedic in the end, with Yin Nuashing around, it ended without any special accidents. At the same time, they bumped into a guy who was drinking while watching the sunset, and he was so scared that he pissed his pants thinking about that guy. Princess Jean felt inexplicable. The guy who carried the Glaze Pagoda around every day, if he knew that the Glaze God was still alive, and in a famous place in the Taiyuan region, what would he think? His hands would probably tremble, and he would simply throw away the glazed pagoda. This thing was a hot potato when its owner was still alive. Only when its owner was completely gone, and the guy who obtained a level 12 weapon that was exclusive to the gods could use it with a peace of mind. Even if its owner returned many years later, it wouldn't matter. Not everyone could be like Yin Nuoxing, who could recover many years of memories. Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, "No problem." Hearing him say this, everyone could only shut up. Thinking about it, when he recovered his memories, he also learned some special methods. In any case, they didn't know about it. He had been cultivating for a period of time between the 9 shrines. Basically, he would stay in the Fire God Shrine for today and tomorrow, and in the Light God Shrine for the next 2 days. Then, unknowingly, when the palace masters and the great elders felt that they had taught him enough, they let him go in satisfaction. Yin Nuoxing expressed that he was physically and mentally exhausted. Originally, he thought that it was a rare rest, but in the end, he was cultivating every day. After spending more than half a month, he finally settled the strange things in the 9 shrines. Other than his head swelling, he also felt a headache. All right, the rest time is long enough. Looking at Ming Ming lazily sprawled on the blanket, her bright wings spread out in front of her, her jade-like hands unconsciously caressing them. Looking at her lifeless golden eyes, it was obvious that she was in a daze. She didn't even react when Yin Nuoxing spoke. It was only when Yin Nuoxing tugged on her wings that the little girl jumped up with a cry of surprise. Looking at Ming, who was so bored that he was about to fall asleep and whose body was covered in mushrooms, and then looking at Chu Yingjian, who was lying on the sofa and stretching, constantly muttering, "I have nothing to do but be bored." Yin Nuoxing only felt that his head was about to explode. "Stop muttering, I'm getting annoyed. After resting for a month, it's about time. Let's set off for the Kuan Yuan region in 2 days." Hearing this, Chu Yingjian also jumped up and raised her jade-like hands. "The Kuan Yuan region. We can finally go home. Haha, accept this fairy's illumination, mortals. Did this guy pick up something strange and eat it?" Yin Nuoxing was horrified. If they let this guy out, would he bring disaster to the Kuan Yuan region? She has always been so strange. "Brother, haven't you gotten used to it yet?" Ming said helplessly. Everyone suddenly had a deep sense of foreboding, except for Chu Yingjian, who was still spinning in circles and laughing like crazy. Chapter 9:33. There were many portals in the 9 divine temples that led to various places in the realm of the gods. The 4 sacred cities of the divine prefecture, the central cities of each origin region, and some cities in special places all had one-way portals in each of the 9 divine temples. Walking through them would be like appearing in that place out of thin air. It would be fine if there was no one around, but if there were people around, they would probably be shocked. As for the way back, whether it was a disciple of the 9 divine temples or someone else, as long as they had the token of the 9 divine temples, they could open a portal back to the divine temples at any time and place without worrying about being tracked down. That spatial passage could not be found by anyone below the level of a god. Of course, the incident with the Void Beast last time was an accident. The Void Beast had the authority to travel through the void, and the term authority usually appeared in the hands of a god. In the world, the void was a little higher than space, so those who controlled the power of the void could basically ignore all problems in space. With the help of the 9 divine temples portals, it was very simple to go to the Kuan Yuan region. Basically, one just had to find the portal, walk through it, spin around for a while, and then, yes, arrive. It was almost the same journey as leaving home to do nothing. Before leaving, Yin Nuoxing still greeted the group of adults so that they wouldn't say that he left without saying anything. However, when he thought about how the simple teleportation just now had brought him to an unknown place, and how he could use the token to communicate at any time, he couldn't bear the thought of going far away. It was as simple as going out for a stroll when he had nothing to do. Lingwu City, the city in the center of the Kuan Yuan region. Thousands of miles high in the sky, Yin Nuashing looked down at the huge city below with his hands in his pockets. A light breeze blew, and his windbreaker rustled and fluttered behind him. A little girl with long purple hair was hanging in front of his chest. Her big gem-like eyes sparkled as she looked down at the big city below with a smile. She opened one hand and grabbed downward while the other was hooked around Yin Nuashing's neck. The number of people going out was still the same. In addition to Chu Yingjian, who was half the host, Yin Nuashing, Xian, Qin Yin, Ming, Little Moon, Bing Air, Little Purple Soul, Yuan Shi, and Nightmare made up a total of 10 people. As for the few people in Yin Nuashing's spiritual world, they did not need to be included, as he had already reached the point where he could go out alone with his family. Where are the pillars of creation? Yuan Shi looked around. Although he knew that the pillars of creation were placed in a very hidden space and could not be seen, he still subconsciously looked left and right, as if he could see the huge pillars from the hidden space. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and smiled. There's no hurry. Let's send this girl home first. Hearing this, Chu Yingjian glanced at him and looked up and down. She smiled inexplicably and said, Actually, you also forgot the location, right? Are you trying to find where it is while you send me home? Cough, cough. Yin Nuashing coughed violently. Xian and the others were also stunned. Did he really forget? After coughing for a long time, Yin Nuashing raised his head awkwardly and said, It's not that I forgot. I just don't remember how many pillars to activate. Every large region has many pillars of creation standing in the hidden space. The hidden space is very well hidden. Even heavenly gods may not be able to find it. Only those who have mastered a special method can enter. He scratched his head and said, The great chaos formation of the divine prefecture uses the 9 pillars of creation of the 9 divine temples as support. The Saint Spirit formation of the Koan Yuan region. How many pillars of creation were there? Yin Nuashing frowned and pondered for a while, then let out a long sigh and said, I don't really remember. I only remember that one of them is in the Spirit State City of the Koan Yuan region, the other one is in the Wind Cloud City, the other one is in the Water Cloud City, the Sea Cover City, and the Dark Emperor City. Oh, by the way, these names are based on the current map of the Koan Yuan region, not based on the divisions in the Primordial Age. There are also some places in the wilderness. Little Star, do you still remember the location of each pillar of creation? Xian asked. When he saw Yin Nuashing nod, he nodded and said, Then we'll use the stupidest method. We'll find them one by one. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and said, There may be thousands of pillars of creation in the origin region, and they are all quite far away from each other. How long will it take to find them one by one? Could there be 9 pillars of creation that support the Saint Spirit formation? Yuan Shi asked casually. Yin Nuashing sighed and hesitated for a long time. Maybe, but other than the 5 locations I mentioned above that are certain, there are 3 more in the wilderness that I know roughly where they are. So there's only one left. I can't remember it no matter how hard I try. Yin Nuashing looked like he was about to break down. He pulled his long hair crazily. Little Purple Soul also helped to pull his hair into a mess. Everyone spread their hands. Who can you blame if you can't remember? If it's not 9, then I might have forgotten even more. Yin Nuashing ran his fingers through his messy hair. He only felt that things were a little bad. Let's go to the nearest one first. Yin Nuashing took out a map and looked at it. Then, he raised his head and looked at Chu Yingjian. Where's your home? Song Kingdom. It's on the way. Chu Yingjian smiled mysteriously, then said, There's no rush. Stupid father didn't rush me. He told me to go back immediately. I'll just wander around on the road and go back for a bit. Yin Nuashing looked suspiciously at Chu Yingjian, who was smiling strangely. After a while, he shook his head. He didn't need to worry about her family. He looked at the map again and said, The closest one to the Martial Spirit City is the Spirit State City. Let's go there and have a look. He waved his hand and took out the Netherworld Ruin Sword. It expanded to 10 feet in size in midair. The group stepped on it without any hesitation and sat down cross-legged or knelt down. Now, Yin Nuashing's group, other than Little Purple Soul, were all demigods and beginner gods. This lineup seemed to have some weight. If there were no accidents, they would be able to do well anywhere. There was a long distance between the martial spirit city and the spirit state city. Although it was said to be the closest, it wasn't that close. Moreover, even if everyone was demigods and beginner gods, if they didn't have Yin Nuoxing's light element, it would take a lot of time to fly over unless they chose to use a teleportation gate. As the most central city of the Kuan Yuan region, there was a teleportation gate that led to other large regions. There were also countless teleportation gates within the Kuan Yuan region. The others were used to it, but Chu Yingxian was very puzzled. It was convenient and fast to use a teleportation gate. They just had to walk over. Wasn't it a waste of time to fly like this? The teleportation gate has blinded your eyes. If you use teleportation everywhere, you won't know what you'll miss on the way. In response to this question, Yin Nuoxing calmly replied, "We're going out to play. Our ambition is to explore. If we use a teleportation gate, we'll just go from one place to another." Only you can say something like this. Chu Yingxian was not stupid. He dared to say this because he was qualified to do so. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to run to their deaths without the light element. Do you think this journey is really short? Ahem. Let's go. Let's go. Yin Nuoxing coughed softly and waved his hand to control the netherworld ruin sword to fly towards the horizon. Seeing him ignore her words stiffly, Chu Yingxian pursed her lips but didn't argue. She quite liked this kind of traveling method. When she snuck out of her home, she also liked to wander around. However, most of the time, she would use teleportation gates to travel around. She had never tried flying over without using a teleportation gate. Allowing the netherworld ruin sword to maintain its speed didn't consume Yin Nuoxing's energy. Furthermore, it could reach half the speed of light. At this speed, it would only take them 3 days to reach Spirit State City. However, if something happened along the way, the time would change. Yin Nuoxing also fulfilled his promise. Although no one had made any promises to him, it was purely because of what he said that day. Everyone just listened to it and didn't think that he would remember it. Divine grade, king grade, divine grade, emperor grade, divine grade, saint grade, divine grade, divine grade, divine grade, Empyrean God. There are a total of 5 grades, corresponding to the later divine grade, king grade, emperor grade, saint grade, divine grade, and the 5th major realm, Empyrean God. The later divine grade experts are collectively called gods. Those who can be called kings among gods are called kings. Those who can be called emperors among gods are called emperors. As for the cultivation method of each stage, you don't need to know this for now. It's still too early. For now, you'd better pass the initial divine grade first. I don't recommend you to learn secret techniques, profound arts, divine arts, and mystic skills. It's not that you can't learn them, but I'm worried that you'll backfire if you learn them. Among you, how many of you have learned divine grade profound arts, divine arts, and mystic skills? Raise your hand and let me see. After Yin Nuoxing finished speaking, Ziyin was the only one who raised his hand. After that, he was also stunned. When he saw that everyone was looking at him with astonishment, he hesitated for a moment and weakly withdrew his hand. "All right, I'm the one who taught this girl. Cough, don't stare at me like that. Then, what's the highest grade that you're currently cultivating?" Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly. Seeing everyone's increasingly strange gazes, she hurriedly asked. "Immortal grade." This was Yuanxi's answer. Then the others also said all the profound arts, mystic skills, divine arts, and so on that they were cultivating. They're all about the same. The highest grade that I'm cultivating is only a divine grade profound art, Qin Yin said faintly. "I say, your identities aren't bad, right?" After hearing this answer, Yin Nuoxing was a little dazed. The people sitting here were either divine sons or divine daughters. The other people who didn't have any special identities wouldn't be any worse than this. Why were their cultivation levels so low? Would these big forces nurture important figures? Don't think that everyone is like you, okay? Everyone looked at her faintly and shook their heads helplessly. Their families did have higher grades, even divine grade ones, but those were the treasures of their families. Even if they were divine sons or divine daughters, they couldn't come into contact with them immediately. The profound arts that they cultivated were basically the second-tier profound arts in their families. If they wanted to obtain higher grades, they could only slowly cultivate and come into contact with them. As for the other ordinary disciples and clansmen, they could only rely on their own contributions to their families to slowly accumulate their achievements. Even so, there were some top-secret things that ordinary people couldn't come into contact with. For example, Yin Nuoxing's profound arts were all divine grade, peerless grade, and divine grade. Now that she had recovered her memories, she cultivated many profound arts that were above the divine grade. That was a super special situation. Others couldn't even be envious of her. If they wanted to be envious, they had to have the courage to die once and go through reincarnation to be envious. Therefore, when Yin Nuoxing took out some divine grade items and piled them on the netherworld ruin sword like cabbages, everyone was stunned. Looking at the pile of scrolls and crystal balls, they felt a slight headache. I dug these out from my memories and re-recorded them in scrolls or crystal balls. It took me a lot of effort, patting the small mountain that was as tall as a person, Yin Nuoxing sighed. It took me a month. There are still a lot of things that I haven't recorded. Take your time. Don't worry. Then a sumptuous feast is right in front of you. Shouldn't you say something? Standing in front of everyone and pointing at the pile of items, Yin Nuoxing said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Everyone looked at each other. Nightmare suddenly jumped up from the ground and roared. Roar. Then he rushed into the small mountain. All right, he's so excited that he used his beastly voice. Yin Nuoxing was speechless as she watched Nightmare bury his but in the pile of crystals. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shook her head. After Nightmare was the first to rush over, the others didn't want to be outdone. They didn't fight over the treasures or anything. They just slowly sensed them. Although these things were good, they shouldn't bite off more than they could chew. They all knew this. Therefore, they only planned to choose one that was most suitable for them. Then they would slowly cultivate it. As for when they finished cultivating it, then they would wait until they finished cultivating it thoroughly. Profound arts that were above the divine grade weren't that easy to cultivate. Oh, you're actually so generous? Chu Yingzhan held a crystal ball the size of a head and walked to Yin Nuoxing's side. She looked at him strangely and said, "Don't hold my things and think that I'm stingy, okay?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes hard. When he turned his head and saw that everyone had chosen, he waved his hand and put away the rest. He said, "When you cultivate, think back to the enlightenment that you had in the Tianxin Taoist sanctum. The enlightenment that those golden runes gave you can help you cultivate better. If you really can't do it, stop. I'll explain the Tao to you." Okay. Lord Tianxin, we'll listen to you. Chu Yingzhan giggled and patted his shoulder with her jade-like hand. Then she sat down. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The others also sat down solemnly, holding crystal balls and scrolls. Their expressions were incomparably sacred, as if they were going on a pilgrimage. They looked at the things in their hands with extreme solemnity, and then very slowly, they placed it between their eyebrows. Instantly, a huge amount of immeasurable information rushed into their minds like a tidal wave, and the group of people fainted. When Yin Nuoxing saw that everyone had fainted, he couldn't help but laugh. Back then, when I was at the mortal realm, I also felt the same when I cultivated a divine grade profound art. Now, it's finally on your heads. It doesn't feel good to be washed away by information until you faint. Ha. There was nothing special about these scrolls and crystal balls. They were all obtained from Empress Jean and the others. They had the function of recording profound arts, cultivation techniques, divine arts, profound skills, secret techniques, and some other information. Although these crystal balls and scrolls prepared by the Nine Shrine were specially made and the preservation effect and recording ability were more powerful, there wouldn't be any change in their nature. They were still used for recording. And those huge amounts of information were recorded into the crystal balls and scrolls using mental strength or soul power. When reading, there wouldn't be a situation where one couldn't cultivate because of language barriers. However, For higher-grade profound arts, the amount of information would increase exponentially. Although there wouldn't be a situation where one would be shocked to death by the information when reading a profound art of too high a grade, it was normal to be shocked to faint because of receiving too much information all at once. Only those profound arts of divine grade and above could be able to withstand such a huge amount of information. Yin Nuoxing didn't have any bad intentions when he took it out for them to cultivate, but it seemed to be quite interesting to see them faint. You're so bad. Suddenly, there was a gentle laughter which stunned Yin Nuoxing. He turned his head stiffly, and his neck even made creaking sounds. Then he saw Xian holding a crystal ball and looking at him with a smile. Girl, you actually didn't faint? Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. This girl, after enduring the shock of information from a divine grade divine art, the second time will be much better. Isn't this what Little Star told me? Xian smiled sweetly. Her words instantly made Yin Nuoxing speechless. He seemed to have said that before, and the former had already fainted from the huge amount of information when she was cultivating the Heavenly Chasm sword technique. So this time, she directly endured it. Cough, cough. Go cultivate. You didn't hear anything. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly, grimaced, and pretended to be fierce as he said. Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. She stuck out her tongue, closed her eyes, and continued to read the information in the crystal ball. The crystal ball in her hand was a divine grade deity, tier 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 deity, tier, seeing that she had entered a state of mind, Yin Nuoxing awkwardly scratched his cheek. He didn't expect that his muttering to himself would be heard. But it was nothing. He just suddenly had a little idea. Anyway, it wouldn't hurt anyone. After comforting himself with this for a while, Yin Nuoxing checked everyone's condition one by one. After seeing that everyone was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. In reality, there shouldn't be any problems, and he just checked just in case. After watching for a while longer, Yin Nuoxing sat down cross-legged and took out the swirling zither from his heart. He placed it on his lap and gently pressed his 10 fingers on the zither's surface. Deep breaths and light exhalations circulated in this manner for a while. Only then did he slowly move his 10 slender fingers and nimbly dance on the zither strings. Waves of beautiful music were emitted from it, causing the entire space to become peaceful. Everyone's mind, which had been stirred into a paste, was also affected by this zither music. The massive amount of information flowing in their minds slowed down significantly, and the furrowed brows on everyone's faces also slowly relaxed. As the music came out, there seemed to be scarlet and pink flames dancing in the air. A huge shadow hovered in the air, slowly rotating around Yin Nuoxing. It seemed to be a phoenix. Chapter 9:34. The night was dark, and the 2 moons poured purple moonlight down from the sky. A hazy and mysterious feeling lingered between the heavens and the earth. High up in the sky, a golden ray of light passed through the horizon. It was like a ray of light that did not attract any attention. Looking at the golden ray of light, one could see a huge sword. On the sword, there was a group of people who were cultivating with their eyes closed. Only a little girl was running to and fro among the group. Occasionally, she would reach out and poke their bodies. Then, she would silently smile and sit at the side. At the tip of the sword, a tall girl wearing a spacious black windbreaker was sitting. The strong wind was filtered into a light breeze by the golden barrier, blowing her colorful long hair and making light rustling sounds with her windbreaker. A 6-foot-long silver-blue zither was resting on her knees. Her slender fingers danced on the zither strings like little fairies. Every time she moved, a celestial sound would be heard, and the tinkling sound would reverberate on the long sword. Around him, a scarlet-pink flame constantly appeared and quickly extinguished, as if it was an illusion. Beside him, there was a shadow. Every time there was an uncoordinated fluctuation in the zither music, the shadow and the scarlet-pink flame would tremble slightly, as if they were about to disappear. It was as if the blossoming zither music had caused them to appear. Ding! A wrong syllable suddenly rang out. After that, there was no more sound. The shadow and the flame had completely disappeared. Yin Nuoxing's fingers were still on the last syllable. After a long while, he opened his eyes slightly. With both hands on the zither strings, he could not help but let out a long sigh and muttered to himself, "It's not working. It's quite nice. Why did you stop?" A teasing voice rang out from behind him, causing him to be startled. He did not need to turn around and know who it was. This voice was mixed with some ridicule and light. Other than that black-clothed man, there was no one else. "Do you think I'm from an opera troupe?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Turning his head, he saw Chu Yingxian, who was dressed in men's clothes, sitting down beside him. Yin Nuoxing casually sized her up and said, "Why aren't you cultivating? Have you encountered a bottleneck or something that you can't understand? Do you want me to give you some pointers?" Seeing him raise his head and pretend to be arrogant, Chu Yingxian couldn't help but say, "Don't pretend to be so arrogant. You're acting like a little girl acting cute. You're not suited for this, you know." Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Chu Yingxian drew circles on the nether void sword as she casually asked, "That song of yours shouldn't be an ordinary song, right? I just played it casually." Yin Nuoxing shook her head and said seriously, "Oh, it's a strange song that I randomly played." Chu Yingxian nodded. Mei Mao looked up at him and said, "Didn't Xian tell you that you look unnatural when you lie? How is that possible?" "I've always," Yin Nuoxing said in shock. But halfway through his sentence, he was stunned because he saw Chu Yingxian looking at him with a mischievous gaze. He was speechless. All right. That song wasn't an ordinary song. How could you tell? Or rather, how could you tell?" Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in distress. "Because you haven't practiced music before." Chu Yingxian smiled faintly and said, "You haven't practiced music before, but the song that you play contains the taste of music. Furthermore, you were once a god. Even if you're just a half-baked god who has inherited your memories, it's still easy for a powerful person like you to practice anything. For you to play a song repeatedly for an entire afternoon and night without problems. Have you been practicing?" Yin Nuoxing's eyes widened. How did this girl know that he had been playing for an entire afternoon and night? "Oh, I felt it when I was half asleep. Your song had already drilled into our souls. Others should have felt it too. It's just that I woke up from boredom as soon as I finished processing the information." Chu Yingxian elbowed Yin Nuoxing's arm and said, "What song was that?" "Huang Jiexian song." Yin Nuoxing looked at Mei Mao, who was as black as obsidian, and said faintly, "Huang Jiexian song. One of the immortal emperor's 9 songs?" Chu Yingxian suddenly covered her mouth and looked at him in shock. Her face was full of disbelief. You actually know about the immortal emperor's 9 songs?" Yin Nuoxing was also very surprised. He didn't expect this girl to know about the Huang Jiexian song, and even know that it was one of the immortal emperor's 9 songs. "How can I not know?" Chu Yingxian suddenly became a little excited. The immortal emperor's 9 songs, which have been passed down from very, very ancient times throughout the entire history of the immortal realm, are known to exist in the immortal realm. Some of them appear together, and some were the songs of the gods who once cultivated music, or even the heavenly gods. The Huang Jiesian song is the celestial music that descended when the divine beast phoenix underwent nirvana and was reborn. It's the most mysterious one. Yin Nuoxing was also shocked. As far as he knew, the existence of the immortal emperor's 9 songs was relatively secret. Even in the ancient times, very few people knew about it. Chu Yingzhan hadn't finished speaking yet and continued excitedly. Prelude to Samsara, Huang Jiesian song, Myriad Calamity divine song, 9 Netherworld song, Ling Tian battle song, Immortal King battle song, Silent Death divine song, Great Tao immortal song, Chaotic lingering sound, a total of 9 songs. Look at your knowledge of the ancient times. Are these the 9 songs? Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while, and then nodded. It is indeed these 9 songs. Where did you get the Huang Jiesian song? Chu Yingzhan came up to him very excitedly, and a fragrant wind blew on his face. Her 2 big eyes occupied his entire line of sight, which made Yin Nuoxing very surprised. He had seen this kind of fanatical gaze like that of a collector once before. Last time, when she found out that he had the eye of the ocean, she was also this fanatical. So, this girl also had a hobby of collecting? Fenger was born with it. Later, as she grew up, the Huang Jiesian song also slowly became complete. In the end, it took root in my mind. I just didn't pay attention to it. After all, I don't major in music. Yin Nuoxing spread out his hands. This time, he didn't lie. Fenger, oh, Her Majesty Phoenix, right? Chu Yingzhan nodded. She didn't feel surprised, but Yin Nuoxing was very surprised. Logically speaking, she was a person from the 7 Elements realm. How could she know so many things that the natives of the divine realm didn't necessarily know? The degree of my curiosity about this world is not something you can imagine. What's wrong with knowing some secrets? When he asked this question, Chu Yingzhan's answer was very matter-of-fact, so he couldn't refute it. As expected, curiosity was the main culprit behind everything. However, young girl, did you know that curiosity killed a cat? Not only could it kill the cat, but it could also kill a god, although he didn't dare to say it out loud. Although I don't know what you were thinking, looking at your changing expression, I feel that you are thinking of something bad. Chu Yingzhan looked at Yin Nuoxing with a dark face and said, Illusion, illusion, I am thinking about the Huang Jiesian song. Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly and waved his hand. Chu Yingzhan looked at him suspiciously, snorted twice, and ignored him. After a while, she smiled mysteriously and said, I know the whereabouts of the immortal Emperor 9 songs. Do you want to know? If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then don't keep me in suspense. Yin Nuoxing glanced at her and said lightly, You. Chu Yingzhan was at a loss for words. If it wasn't for the fact that she felt a bit apologetic for taking his divine grade profound technique, she wouldn't have told him this secret. However, even though she knew that he had this kind of temperament, seeing him looking like he didn't care about it and occasionally glancing over, she was still angered to the point of laughing. Cough, cough. After coughing twice, Chu Yingzhan muttered to herself for a while and said, There is a place outside the Azure Emperor City. That place can be considered as a place of historical interest. Many people know about it, but no one knows what it is exactly. After all, many people have tried to fish in troubled waters to see if they would be favored and obtain something, but they didn't get anything. That place has existed for a long time. Well, seeing that you have the divine grade profound art, I will tell you this information. I think, if it is you, you should be able to obtain it, right? Chu Yingzhan muttered. She was still thinking of taking it when she had the strength in the future. Saying it now made her feel a little pained. But after a moment, she felt relieved. Who knew if it would be taken away by some lucky guy one day? If she let Yin Nuoxing take it away in advance, she might be able to listen to it. So she confidently made a request. Idiot, if you really get it. Even if you're stingy and not willing to pass it to me, it's not a problem. But can you play it for me? Just hearing the first part of the sentence, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but have black lines on his face. He had already taken out a pile of divine grade profound arts and so on, but in the end he still couldn't avoid being labeled as stingy. Immediately, he was so angry that he wanted to explode. But after hearing the last sentence, his anger more or less dissipated. He helplessly sighed and said, Okay. When I really get it, I'll play it for you, okay? Uh-huh. Chu Yingzhan smiled sweetly and nodded heavily. Looking at the young girl who was smiling like a flower, Yun Nuoxing sighed in distress. He calmed his mind and calmed his heart. Then, his slender fingers continued to gently dance on the zither strings. That elegant and mellow melody once again floated out. The scarlet-pink flame and the phoenix's shadow once again hovered around his body. Only the gentle melody flowed, and there wasn't any terrifying power. Beside him, the girl dressed in men's black clothes hugged her knees and looked at him quietly with her head tilted. The purple moonlight shone on her long, colorful hair, embellishing her beautiful face with some mystery. A faint fairy aura was emitted from her body, as if she was a fairy born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Coupled with the melodious and faint melody, this scene was very beautiful, and she was slightly fascinated by it. While she was looking at Yin Nuoxing, she didn't notice that behind her, a pair of golden mei mao and a pair of deep purple eyes quietly opened. Just like the former, they were looking at Yin Nuoxing. Sister Xian, aren't you going to do something? Ming stretched out her wings and patted Xian as she said in a teasing tone. Xian only smiled and shook her head. She rolled her eyes and suddenly moved to Ming's side. Her red lips were next to Ming's ear, and she whispered something that only the two of them could hear. Then, Ming's holy and beautiful face turned red with a bang. Her large golden eyes blinked, and she quickly lowered her head. This kind of thing was too, won't Big Brother be angry? I don't think he'll like this. Ming hesitated. Her beautiful eyes kept fluttering as the word Yin had just said kept echoing in her mind. She felt her head heat up just thinking about it. Don't worry. It's something that someone who knows Little Star very well told me. Ming, you can also... I don't think it's a good idea. After Xian finished speaking, she let out a small cry of surprise, which made Ming roll her eyes. You've already said it, and now you realize it's not a good idea? And you're actually talking about this kind of thing. I didn't expect that the usually quiet and well-behaved Sister Xian would have such thoughts. However, this kind of offer was very tempting, but she still had to think twice. If this kind of thing failed, she was worried that Big Brother would hate her, although Big Brother was a good guy. Then, Sister Xian, what are you going to implement? Your plan? Do you need my help? Ming whispered. Although she didn't dare to agree with Xian completely, she still thought it was fun. It seemed like a good idea to use this opportunity to give it a push. The sky is full of beautiful scenery. We just have to wait for the right time. Xian smiled mysteriously, which made Ming speechless. She looked up at Big Brother, who was not far away. After thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and nodded. This kind of offer was indeed very attractive. It just happened to poke at the tip of her heart. No matter what, she wanted to give it a try. On the other side, Yin Nuoxing suddenly trembled and opened his eyes in shock. Under Chu Yingzhan's strange gaze, his body trembled violently. He quickly hugged himself and shivered. Why'd I suddenly feel so cold? It's as if someone is secretly plotting against me. Old habits? Are you worried? Every day like before? Chu Yingzhan raised her head to glance at him. Then, she looked up at the night sky and said, Calm down. You said it. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Yin Nuoxing and the others did not find a chance to stop along the way. The main reason was that they did not find any place worth stopping, so they could only rush past. This made Yin Nuoxing feel a little regretful. In the past, when they traveled, they could always find some unknown things in some corners, or some hidden heavenly treasures, or some places with dense energy, or some dilapidated walls. From there, they could unearth a story. He had to admit that he was a little bored, but this was the fun of traveling. Just passing through the teleportation gate was the choice of busy people. Fortunately, he had the light element, so his speed was not slow. After 3 days of nonstop travel, the group passed through a vast land and finally arrived at the place called Spirit State City. This place was towards the north, but it was not completely close to the northern ice realm. The weather was not cold either. In the Spirit State City, there was a rather mysterious place. This was a legend, and it was very famous. It was so famous that even Yun Nuoxing, who did not pay attention to outside matters, had heard of it. It was something that he had heard of in this era, but it immediately made his memory trace back to the ancient era. The two seemed to be the same place. This place is still very mysterious. In the starry sky, the curtain of night had just covered the world. The netherworld ruins floated thousands of miles high in the sky. Yin Nuoxing and the others looked down at the starry city below. They could not help but sigh at the peace and prosperity of this place. They wanted to say, look, this is the life that I once yearned for. Ordinary, peaceful, and worry-free. Unfortunately, they had embarked on another path. This kind of peace was always an extravagant hope. Are we going directly to find the pillar of creation? Yuanxi also looked down at the densely lit city below and asked casually. He had not forgotten the purpose of coming here. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and put a finger in front of his lips. He said in a mysterious tone, "It's nighttime today." Everyone was stunned. What's wrong with nighttime? The moon still rises every day. It's just that there are 2 moons in total. Isn't it just nighttime? Don't tell me you want to go sleep and rest. Chu Yingzhan tilted his head and said. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. Don't you all know? Even I know about this, but you all actually, you know about it too? Everyone was stunned. When they saw Yin Nuoxing pointing his finger at the sky, they immediately understood. It seemed that this person would occasionally pay attention to external matters. 9 heavens falling Milky Way, 1 hanger, 1 world. Yin Nuoxing pointed his finger at the sky. Spirit State City, 9 Milky Way. 1 is negative and 9 is positive. Block off all the energy in your eyes and withdraw it back into your bodies. Then, seal off your spiritual energy and soul energy. Use the eyes of mortals to look at the sky with Spirit State City as the center. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and pointed at Spirit State City below. Then, he raised his right hand towards the sky. Everyone was suspicious, but they still did as he said. They withdrew all the energy in their eyes and then tried to use the eyes of mortals to look at the world. It had been a long time since they had tried this. Ever since the day they started cultivating, their nature had gradually deviated from that of mortals. They used different senses to feel the world and used different eyes to look at the world. Thus, until now, when they lowered the energy concentration in their bodies to a certain level and restored the intensity of their eyes to that of mortals, they couldn't see the colors of the energy that filled the world. Their vision was slightly dimmer. The place that was originally filled with energy was very bright. Now, when they looked at it, it didn't seem any different from the surroundings. However, when they all raised their heads, everyone was stunned. In the sky, 9 silver light screens fell from the starry sky and descended below the starry sky. It was as if streaks of aurora were neatly arranged in the sky. The silver light screens were like soft curtains as they swayed and shone in the starry sky. The brilliant starlight turned into decorations that densely covered the silver light screens. It was very beautiful and incomparably brilliant. Come, let us head to the Milky Way. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.